Chapter 2059. Of course, Han Fei hadn't comprehended the sky splitter yet because he hadn't devoted himself to studying his Tao yet. Since the snail had given him enough resources, he wasn't in a hurry to rob and kill the demons and the underwater human clans. At the end of the day, what he wanted was resources. If he really wanted to say what kind of hatred he had for these forces, it would be because they had once attacked him. Although almost the entire chaotic ocean was looking for the Yin-Yang heaven, it was almost impossible to find the Yin-Yang heaven in less than 100 years. Unless all the sea creatures in the chaotic azure sea were their spies. 3 days later, Han Fei returned to the Yin-Yang heaven and told Xia Shaochan and the others that he would be cultivating outside for a few years. He left 10 billion ultra-quality spiritual stones and left in a hurry. 3 months later, in the land of origin, in Han Fei's origin sea. No way. Han Fei frowned. The 10,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy had only expanded the origin sea by less than 1,000 kilometers. This meant that even if he consumed all the immortal spiritual energy, he could only expand the origin sea by 1 or 2,000 kilometers, which was meaningless. Han Fei even felt that it would be more difficult to expand the origin sea beyond 100,000 kilometers. Although the 10,000 strands of immortal spiritual energy could still expand 700 or 800 kilometers, it would be good if he could expand it by 500 kilometers. After all, this origin sea was a process of continuous expansion from the inside out. At this point, the consumption of expanding it by 1 meter would be hundreds of thousands of times greater than the original consumption, so the consumption would naturally be greater and greater. Han Fei also tried to expand it with spiritual energy, but after consuming 1 million ultra-quality spiritual stones, the origin sea only expanded by less than 5 kilometers. This actual data made Han Fei's heart sink. If this continued, the more it expanded, the more resources it would consume. Han Fei didn't try again, and there was no need to try again. This was really too expensive. Han Fei said to part of the old turtle's soul, "Old Yuan, how do you usually expand the origin sea in the heaven-opening state?" The old turtle said, "Well, the heaven-opening state generally doesn't expand the origin sea too often if they don't have some resources. And they rarely use resources to expand the origin sea. Then just leave it there." The old turtle, use the great Tao. After splitting open the sky, your origin sea will give birth to immortal spiritual energy and Tao charm, allowing it to multiply endlessly. At this time, you need to consider how to maintain the balance of your origin sea world. For example, wind, thunder, rain, lightning, the rise and fall of the sun and moon, the survival of all living beings, and so on. If you're interested, you can research the creation of living beings. Should we continue the simulation? The old tortoise said, "It's not a simulation. When you reach the heaven-opening realm, you will understand the workings of heaven and earth, and the Tao of heaven and earth is your own Tao." In a sense, the circulation of the origin sea was also the circulation of one's own Tao. The operation of the great Tao is also the origin of your Tao aura. Han Fei asked, "Then the Taoist aura that I have will be used to open up the origin sea?" The old turtle said, "To be honest, it's very difficult to open another origin sea after 100,000 kilometers. If you don't belong to a superpower that has endless resources, then you can either find the starting ground like I said, or slowly grind it with your own great Tao. In fact, the most reasonable way is to use your own great Tao to open up the origin sea, because using resources is actually a shortcut. Only the origin sea opened up by the great Tao will be more solid. And the origin sea built up by the accumulation of resources needs to be stabilized, strengthened, and improved." Han Fei asked, "Is it so difficult? Doesn't that mean that the origin sea of most heaven-opening realms is suppressed to about 100,000 kilometers?" The old turtle nodded. "Yes. However, when you open the sky and become an emperor, you will get a little bit of one of the most powerful forces in this world, that is, the primordial purple qi. Unfortunately, you can only use the primordial purple qi for a very short period of time when you open the sky. If you use it well, you can forcibly open the origin sea at the moment when you open the sky. I have heard that someone opened the sky and opened the sea for 80,000 kilometers in a day. Primordial purple chi. Opened 80,000 kilometers in a day. Han Fei was shocked. What kind of fucking strong master could do this? The old turtle smiled and said, well, you can't believe it. How do you know what happened in other people's origin sea? Maybe he was just teasing you. If one can really open the sky and open the sea in a day, wouldn't he be able to crush countless heaven-opening realm experts? Han Fei frowned. Crush. The old turtle nodded. Well, although we generally don't open the origin sea, that's because the resources are limited, or the accumulated great Tao is not enough. Once we open the origin sea, how can we fight? We have to leave some means to protect ourselves, right? However, if you want to make your strength stronger, you still have to open it up. We usually accumulate a large amount of resources or a large amount of great Tao, and then open it up all at once. Basically, all the emperors do this. Han Fei asked, so, the size of the sea is also the main standard to measure the strength of the heaven-opening realm, right? The old turtle nodded. Yes. But generally speaking, the sea opened up by the great Tao is stronger than the sea opened up by resources. But if you have enough mysterious yellow soil or primordial spiritual soil, then there's nothing to say. Han Fei learned some knowledge about opening the sky in advance, but this knowledge was useless to him. However, this at least proved one thing, which was that he didn't have to consider opening up the origin sea to make himself stronger. In the sea opening realm, the size of the origin sea had almost reached the limit. The only thing he could do now was to study his own great Tao. Or, he could also try to cultivate the void body refining technique to the phenomenal success level. In this case, his strength should be further improved. He didn't know whether his strength could be improved by 20%, but it was definitely enough to improve by at least one level. However, compared to these, he had to spend some time studying the giant beast divine Tao. The giant beast divine Tao itself contained 1398746 kinds of giant beast great Tao, most of which were the paths chosen by other giant beasts, and there were as many as 1.4 million kinds. Han Fei had been studying it in the origin sea for a whole year. Based on his current understanding of the giant beast great Tao, Han Fei found that the cultivation of the giant beast divine Tao, like the fish transformation technique, also had a process from rough to mature. The core problem that ran through the entire giant beast divine Tao was the lack of resources, overburdened, and extremely powerful body refining techniques. Generation after generation of giant beasts had been studying this problem. Most of the giant beasts tried to create an extremely powerful body refining technique. This kind of giant beast great Tao accounted for 50%. The remaining 40% of the giant beast great Tao was studying what kind of creature to choose as its main body to bear its terrifying physical body in the later stage. And in this 90% of the giant beast great Tao, 60% cultivated with their main body, and 30% transformed other creatures into the giant beast of their choice. As for the last 10%, it was all kinds of unconventional giant beasts. Han Fei's favorite was also this kind of giant beast great Tao. After all, it was the best great Tao that the giant beasts had come up with in their lifetime. Each of them had its own rationality. For example, Han Fei saw the giant beast great Tao that Water Toot Toot cultivated. That great Tao was based on the jellyfish, which turned itself into water. In this way, not only could it constantly expand its body, but it could also bear the unparalleled physical strength. Moreover, the creator of this great Tao had also overcome the shortcomings of this great Tao. That was, this great Tao itself showed a contrast with the physique of the giant beast great Tao. So he created the power of extreme compression and directly refined the giant beast's body into a body of water. It existed with pressure as its main body's strength. In addition to Water Tutut's great Tao, there was also the giant beast great Tao. It actually tried in vain to refine itself into a heavenly beast, meaning a heavenly beast. It wanted to refine itself into a part of heaven. Han Fei didn't know what it was thinking. The result might be that it was struck to death. There was also a great Tao that created the operation of anti-force, dividing its giant beast great Tao into two parts. One was anti-gravity, so that it could ignore the gravity of its own body. However, there were very few giant beasts that were really crushed to death by the gravity of its own body. Therefore, the second part that this person researched was regarded as the operation of anti-force and anti-soul. It didn't need to practice at all. Any creature that attacked it, its power would pass through its body and become its own power. Then, it would form its own attack and then hit back. The same was true for soul attacks. Although Han Fei didn't know what happened to this giant beast in the end, this idea was really cool. However, this seemed to be contrary to the giant beast Great Tao's Great Tao. However, who said that giant beasts had to strengthen their bodies? Han Fei felt that this might be a direction of choice. On this day, Han Fei was still reading these Great Tao of giant beasts. In another half a month, he would almost finish reading them. Suddenly, when Han Fei saw a Great Tao of giant beasts, he suddenly straightened his body. This Great Tao was about a Nirvana Tao. This was somewhat similar to the Great Tao of King Crab and the others. The difference was that the King Crab and the others' Great Tao of shedding and rebirth was dangerous. They had to recultivate again and again, and each recultivation was just the limit of the divine Tao of giant beasts. Han Fei just felt that it was a waste of time, so he didn't choose the King Crab's Great Tao of shedding and rebirth as his first choice. But theoretically speaking, his Great Tao was very reasonable. If he could keep improving his bloodline and his life level, he could theoretically cultivate to the immortal state. However, this Nirvana Tao made Han Fei more interested, because he didn't need to recultivate again and again like the King Crab. Every time he recultivated, there was a possibility that he might die. This Great Tao of Nirvana was like the Nirvana of a phoenix. It was known as the immortal firebird. If they were killed, they would be reborn from the ashes, and they would become even stronger. If so, wouldn't it be infinitely stronger? Han Fei continued to read. This was exactly the Great Tao that this person walked. But the description above mentioned. Rebirth required the support of energy and treasures. Before every nirvana, he had to prepare the resources for the nirvana. And what resources were determined the strength after nirvana. That's it. Han Fei felt that his inventions were still not as good as Zhang Xuanyu's. But in terms of resources, even 10 Zhang Xuanyus couldn't compare to him. To cultivate this Great Tao, one only needed to find powerful enough treasures to make one's nirvana. It was simple and straightforward. He wondered why so many people didn't choose this Great Tao. Han Fei thought to himself, I have to ask the old snail. Chapter 2060. The old snail didn't like to move. In addition, he had accumulated a lot of resources over the years, so he couldn't stop cultivating the pure mystic body from the beginning. It was a long-lost feeling of strength growth. Whether it was the old snail or Tai Yuan, after obtaining the pure mystic body, they knew that it was a super powerful body tempering technique that far surpassed the chaos fiend body. Even if this body tempering technique consumed too many resources. One of the reasons why Han Fei passed down this technique was to make the chaos heavens stand on his side. If that was the case, then his side would be equivalent to the 3 emperors. In the chaotic azure sea, they would become an unshakable super force. At this moment, on the back of the origin divine body, the old snail was cultivating the pure mystic body. The remaining spiritual energy in his body was constantly spewing out. In addition to the old snail, many sea expansion behemoths were cultivating the same way. This strange situation directly caused the richness of the spiritual energy in the land of origin to reach an unimaginable level. Seeing this, Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. The richness of the spiritual energy here was probably 70 or 80 times stronger than in the Yin-Yang heaven. To put it bluntly, cultivating here for a day was equivalent to cultivating in other places in the chaotic azure sea for 100 days. Han Fei's appearance didn't distract the kings. Everyone was actively consuming the resources they had accumulated. After so many years, who hadn't saved up billions of ultra-quality spiritual stones? Therefore, they naturally didn't have time to talk to Han Fei. Han Fei ran to the old snail's side. Seeing that the old snail didn't respond, he patted the snail's shell. Senior Snail Emperor, I have a question. I saw a great Tao called Nirvana Divine Tao in the giant beast Divine Tao. I want to ask, why doesn't anyone take this great Tao? Although the old snail was cultivating, he naturally knew that Han Fei was here. Hearing Han Fei ask this question, the old snail wasn't surprised at all. He said, I didn't. There are many people who take this great Tao. It's fine in the early stages, but in the later stages, the difficulty of nirvana is too high. For example, if you want to go from the sea expansion realm to the nirvana realm, you may need many kinds of heaven spirit and earth treasures. You even need different rare treasures to carry the recovery of your body after nirvana. Where can you find these rare treasures in the end? Han Fei thought to himself, just because the resources can't be found? Are we not going to take this path? The old snail, there is another important reason. After every nirvana, the new body would be at least 30% stronger than the old body. If it's lower than 30%, the path of nirvana will cause you to suffer a backlash. Therefore, the resources prepared for every nirvana must be increased by at least 30% or more. Han Fei couldn't help frowning. How could there be such a weird trick? The old snail continued, also, there are conditions for nirvana. After undergoing nirvanic rebirth, you have stabilized your cultivation base and reached the limits of this body. You need to find someone to kill you. Borrowing the hands of others to help oneself attain nirvana. You need other people's anger. Only when they are extremely angry and furious will you absorb their anger as one of the most important resources for nirvana. That's why you can't find your friends yet. But if your enemy is too strong, he can kill you before you reach nirvana, but he can also kill you after you reach nirvana. Han Fei had a headache when he heard that. Sure enough, every path was not easy to take. The first difficulty of the nirvana path was resources, the second difficulty was to prevent the backlash, and the third difficulty was to provoke the enemy's anger to kill him. However, although these conditions were harsh, there were ways to solve them. Han Fei said, Senior, you're so experienced. Do you have any other experiences that you haven't shared with me besides this giant beast divine path? The old snail, I don't have any experience. It's just that there are too many people who take this path. However, they died one after another, and in the end, no one took this path. Look at the giant beasts. None of them took the nirvana path because they think they can't hold on for too many times. But Han Fei felt that it was probably because the chaotic azure sea was too small. If it were in the outside world, there would be many people who took this path. Anyway, Han Fei was not cultivating with his real body. Even if this path didn't work, it wouldn't matter. But what if it worked? By then, his external incarnations would all return to their origins, and it would be hard for him to imagine to what extent his strength would be improved. After learning about the various shortcomings of the nirvana path, Han Fei immediately returned to the origin sea. Now that he had chosen the path, there were two more things to do. First, he had to choose the creature he wanted to transform into. This time, Han Fei couldn't choose the human race. If the human race was too big, it would really be fatal everywhere. Even if he conquered all the fatal points, he would become a super giant. What? Did he want to create a new world? In fact, when Han Fei was studying the path, he had already come up with countless ideas. However, in the end, Han Fei still turned his eyes to octopus-like creatures like Little Fatty. Take Little Fatty, for example, as a son of a turtle, it could directly absorb 90% of the force. In the same realm, Han Fei didn't think that anyone could directly kill Little Fatty with physical means. Unless, in the same realm, there was someone who was 10 times stronger than Little Fatty. Secondly, the Behemoth clan focused on body refinement. If he chose a creature like an octopus, not only could it absorb the force, but it also had a strong defense. In the same realm, it might need to be 20 times stronger than him to kill him. Thirdly, the regenerative ability of octopus creatures was too strong. They could control their flesh and blood at will. Even if they were broken, they could quickly recover through the wriggling of muscles and the contraction of blood vessels and meridians, so there was basically no bleeding. As long as he was fast, the severed limb would grow back the next day. Han Fei pondered for a long time. It seemed that unless he was absolutely suppressed by his strength, choosing an octopus creature seemed to be the most perfect one among all the creatures he knew. Besides, when he killed Zhou Bai in the Imperial Palace, he happened to get a Demon Emperor's inner core, which was the inner core of a heaven-opening state cultivator. As the foundation of his external incarnation, even if he didn't undergo nirvana, his octopus body wouldn't be weak. As for what to use as the body after nirvana in the future, he would have to wait and see. Anyway, the cultivation of the external incarnation couldn't be done in a day or two. After quickly deciding on the body of the external incarnation, there was only one thing left, which was the external incarnation. Of course, he couldn't use the external incarnation of Neza. That one had already embarked on its own path, which was purely the path of fighting and killing. It had even comprehended the way of swordsmanship and mastered such a powerful method as the heaven-opening sword manual. However, it wouldn't embark on the path of swordsmanship. Because Neza's external incarnation had been fighting, and killing since it was a child. It was proficient in all kinds of weapons. Even if it comprehended the way of swordsmanship, it would still be difficult for it to embark on the path of swordsmanship. Since he didn't need Neza's external incarnation, Han Fei was very confident. Naturally, he had other plans. Once, in the ideal palace, he struggled so hard to obtain the Universal 3. Because he was missing a page of the Golden Scroll, the Universal 3 that he got in the end was not a complete version, but an incomplete version. Because for a long time, Han Fei felt that he didn't need to use the external incarnation. Then, by a freak accident, he refined an external incarnation with the body of the water fairy, so Han Fei naturally didn't lack external incarnations. In Han Fei's view, before he came to the land of origin, the external incarnations weren't very useful. Even Neza's body hadn't reached the sea-opening realm yet, even though his strength was already extremely strong in the venerable realm. However, it was still too difficult to catch up with his original body. Therefore, even if he mastered the Universal 3, it wouldn't be very meaningful if he could only create a few external incarnations similar to Neza's body. However, the divine path of the giant beast was different. This was a great way that could lead to divinity. The moment Han Fei saw it, he knew that he had to take this path, so he decided to use the Universal 3. Of course, to use the Universal 3, he had to continue to deduce it first. And from the incomplete version to the complete version, he only needed 10 wisps of chaotic energy. In the past, when he didn't even have a wisp of chaotic energy, 10 wisps of chaotic energy was already an astronomical number. But now, it was just a drizzle, not worth mentioning. In his mind, Han Fei said in his heart, deduce. In just over 10 minutes, the complete version of the Universal 3 appeared in his mind. Universal 3, unrated, note, it can separate one person into 3. It can create 2 external incarnations. According to the cultivator's will, the external incarnations can be recultivated from childhood. Besides, the external incarnations are not connected to the main body's soul. Deduction consumption, 1000 wisps of chaotic energy drawback. If the external incarnations are not connected to the main body's soul, the external incarnations will easily develop their own will. Note 1, the main body can choose to consume 30% of the main body's origin power, so that the external incarnations can inherit the main body's bloodline foundation and providence foundation. Note 2, according to the bloodline and potential of the main body, the external incarnations can ignore the level barrier and heavenly tribulation to a certain extent. In fact, after coming here, Han Fei frowned slightly. Consuming 30% of his origin power meant that the power of his main body was weakened. Although it was optional, if his main body lost 30% of its power, it meant that his strength would be greatly reduced. Besides, if the external incarnations developed their own will, if they refused to return or even competed with him for the main body, wouldn't they be like Xue Fan? In order to create a Xue Fan, he even ate his main body in the end? Fortunately, this technique could still be deduced. The second time, 1,000 wisps of chaotic energy were consumed. The name of the technique was Tao begets 3. The drawback of this technique was greatly reduced, but it was still possible for the external incarnations to develop their own will. And the consumption of chaotic energy was as much as 20%. The third deduction consumed 10,000 wisps of chaotic energy. This time, Han Fei's eyes popped up. 1 turning into 3 pure ones, unrated. Note, it can separate one person into 3. It can create 2 external incarnations. According to the cultivator's will, the external incarnations can be recultivated from childhood. Besides, the external incarnations are not connected to the main body's soul. Deduction consumption, unable to deduce drawback. 1 turning into 3 pure ones must create a second external incarnation. Finally, when the 2 external incarnations are at the same level as the main body, the 3 pure ones can be combined into 1. Note 1, the main body can choose to use its own essence, blood and soul as a guide to prevent the external incarnations from developing their own will. Note 2, the main body can choose to consume 1% of the origin power of the main body so that the external incarnations can inherit the bloodline foundation and the foundation of providence of the main body. Note 3, according to the bloodline and potential of the main body, the external incarnations can ignore the level barrier and heavenly tribulation to a certain extent. Note 4, after the 3 pure ones are combined into 1, the basic strength of the main body will increase by at least 3 to 9 times. At this point, the 3 pure ones couldn't be deduced. And this could only be Han Fei's final choice. Phew, 3 to 9 times the strength increase. Han Fei touched his chin. 1% of the origin power is not much. This is totally a gamble. Although it's a bit difficult to combine the 3 pure ones, the return is too high. Chapter 2061. When the 1 turning into 3 pure ones was deduced, Han Fei couldn't have been more excited. Although he didn't know when the second incarnation would be created, there would be plenty of opportunities for the sea creatures in the future. If he couldn't do it, Han Fei felt that he could even take the path of the behemoth. All in all, with such a high rate of return, he was full of confidence in attaining immortality. Although he hadn't even opened the sky yet. More importantly, both the 1 turning into 3 pure ones and the 1 turning into 3 pure ones mentioned incarnations, which could ignore the barriers between levels and heavenly tribulations to a certain extent. In other words, his incarnation didn't necessarily need to go through tribulations. As long as he could continue on this path, his odds of success would be far higher than others. That was fucking ridiculous. As for 10% of the original power, Han Fei could afford it. He just needed to recultivate. At that moment, Han Fei did as he said, which saved Han Fei a lot of trouble. He summoned Little Fatty, took a mass of essence, blood and soul from it, and injected it into the demon Emperor Niden. Then, he infused chaotic energy, soul power, flesh power, and spiritual will into it. At that moment, in Han Fei's origin sea, the wind and clouds were surging, and even some of the immortal spiritual energy that Han Fei didn't intend to put into it was absorbed into this new incarnation. In addition, Han Fei also tried to change some of the meridians of his incarnation and constructed a very complicated yin-yang millstone array in his body, in order to better absorb energy and resources in the future. In front of Han Fei, the flesh and blood of living creatures were growing in the void. Whether it was his own flesh and blood, soul, demon Emperor Niden, or other resources. At this moment, they all turned into nothingness and were devoured by the chaotic phantom in front of him. He didn't know if it was because the incarnation he created was too strong, but the creation this time was a little different from that of the incarnation created by the water deity. The creation this time lasted for 6 days and 6 nights. Han Fei watched the flesh and blood, meridians, and demonic veins intertwined during the whole process. In the end, when the body of a black octopus appeared, information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Immortal Demon Octopus, External Incarnation, Introduction: It used to be a primeval ferocious beast. Because it once had a god in its veins, it became mysterious and can be classified as a god. The immortal demon octopus has extremely powerful regenerative and self-healing abilities, and its suckers can absorb spiritual energy, essence, blood, vitality, and soul. When attacked, it could neutralize 90% of the attack. It could also devour the spiritual attacks of all creatures within level 10 and transform them into its own spiritual attacks. Level S76 Equality A Mysterious Realm Seeking Spiritual Energy 223664 Collectible Immortal Demon Core Immortal A Collectible Immortal Monster Pill Eye of Devouring Note the Immortal Demon Core Devouring Eye remarks the immortal demon octopus was once a prehistoric beast. Good heavens, there's actually a connection between the living beings I created? Han Fei was confused. Although its target was the octopus, it must be more than that, right? The only thing he could use was the essence, blood and soul of the 9-death soul-splitting octopus. For this to happen, it was highly likely that the bloodline of the 9-death soul-splitting octopus contained some traces of the bloodline of the undying demon octopus. Inkar returning spirit Chin of world of Fei of essence, he in was able, he of the turning. Of the god of the body. Little Fatty had the faint bloodline of a divine beast, while Han Fei's was a primeval ferocious beast. They belonged to two different camps. Could it be that divine beasts and primeval ferocious beasts had sex in the distant history? Han Fei thought it was highly possible. The old turtle had mentioned it before. Actually, if one really studied the bloodlines of the 10,000 races, one would find that they were all mixed. The bloodlines hidden in the deepest depths might contain everything. Even an ordinary person might have the bloodline of a god. Some people were lucky and showed signs of atavism. They accidentally activated the 1 in a million ability of that bloodline and became a proud son of heaven. Some people might live an ordinary life without even knowing that they had such a powerful bloodline. Anyway, Han Fei felt that he had made a profit this time. In a sense, his external incarnation should be a kind of son of God, right? Now, his external incarnation was only 1,000 meters tall. However, once he started to practice the divine way of beasts, the immortal demon octopus would quickly grow larger. Han Fei couldn't imagine how strong the immortal demon octopus would be when it cultivated to the same level as the old snail. Han Fei grinned. From now on, my external incarnation will be called. Well. Zhang Daiqian. Well, it fits the image of an octopus. Besides, since this external incarnation is a sea demon behemoth, it doesn't need to cultivate with the main body. It can walk a path that belongs to sea demons alone. Of course, that's after I go to the sea realm. Now, Zhang Daiqian is still too weak. Even if he has a powerful background, his realm is still not high enough. Han Fei moved the tentacles of his new body, feeling still not used to it. He said, Old Yuan, what do you think of my external incarnation? To be honest, the old turtle was dumbfounded at this moment. He knew that Han Fei was going to create an external incarnation, but he didn't expect that Han Fei would create such a creature that he didn't recognize at all. The old turtle asked, Do you know which clan you belong to? Han Fei smiled. Which clan can I belong to? The octopus clan. The old turtle was speechless. It's not the same species as other octopuses. Anyway, I don't know it. Are you going to use this external incarnation to cultivate the path of behemoths? Han Fei shrugged. Of course, you haven't seen it. You don't understand how terrifying this path is. The old turtle asked, Didn't that snail say that this path is extremely difficult to cultivate? Han Fei sneered. This is a great path to the divine realm. If it's not difficult, can he become a divine realm cultivator? Huh? Divine realm? The old turtle was stunned. How could there be a great path to the divine realm in this shabby place? Even he was a little tempted by her words. However, although he was tempted, he still had his main body, which was already in the heaven-opening realm. If he had a chance to return to his main body in the future, he might consider cultivating the path of behemoths, but not for now. On the other side, Han Fei controlled his octopus body and began to move, adapting to the habits of an octopus. He found that this body was too fucking flexible. He could control any suction cup on his body at will, and even any muscle in his body, any meridian. He could twist himself into any shape, and he could even control his tentacles to dance in all sorts of ways. In terms of physical flexibility, Han Fei felt that this thing was almost fucking perfect. On the other side, Han Fei looked at his personal information. After all, he had consumed 10% of his original power, so his strength must have been reduced. In his eyes, information popped up. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 99, see opening realm, see expanding realm greater than 840,006, upgradable, chaotic energy greater than 143,819 wisps, spiritual power a 991134, perception range a 1 million kilometers, power greater than 461,128 waves. First spiritual heritage a primordial vein, second spiritual heritage a vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 90, second spiritual beast emperor sparrow, level 92, main art, time fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor. Level, divine quality. Seeing this scene, Han Fei heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not too outrageous. His current strength was roughly weaker than when he attacked the investiture heaven, but not much weaker. He only lost tens of thousands of waves in strength. After that, the increase in strength brought by his cultivation after the investiture heaven, including the resources of his origin sea, was almost completely consumed when he created the external incarnation this time. In other words, after the investiture heaven, all his efforts were actually in vain. His strength was less than 5% weaker than before he attacked the investiture heaven. Fortunately, strength and whatnot could be regained through cultivation. He just needed to spend a few hundred more years practicing the void sky observation technique and the void body refinement technique. If he cultivated in his origin sea, it wouldn't take more than 10 years. However, Han Fei saw the words, upgradable, on the sea expanding realm family tree. He couldn't help but take another look. When he took a closer look, the information popped up, sea species, 296202223, owner 840006, nearby bloodlines, sea suppressing snail, time dragon carp, golden crow divine blood, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, emperor sparrow, hexagon starfish, recommended bloodline, sea suppressing snail. Han Fei was taken aback. Sea suppressing snail? Does it mean that it's the king snail? Han Fei didn't expect that the king snail's bloodline level was quite high. It was even higher than the green water Kirin. However, he hadn't gotten the king snail's blood yet. Maybe it was detected by the demon purification pot because it was very close to the king snail. Han Fei glanced at his immortal demon octopus and wondered why his external incarnation couldn't provide his bloodline to devour. Was it because it was his external incarnation? But whatever, he had to get the king snail's blood first. Immediately, Han Fei's figure flashed and he appeared in the outside world. Senior King Snail, I'm in trouble. You have to help me. As soon as Han Fei jumped out, he roared at the king snail. The king snail was cultivating happily and couldn't help but say, it's only been a few days. Why did you come out again? Han Fei hurriedly said, Senior King Snail, please lend me a drop of essence blood. I'm building an external incarnation, and now I'm just short of a super bloodline. In this land of origin, only your bloodline is the strongest. You can't just sit by and do nothing. Hiss. You want my essence blood? The old snail was so annoyed that he didn't even know how to borrow essence blood. However, Han Fei said, Senior, I swear in the name of the Great Way, in the name of the human king, and in the name of the heavenly tribulation that I have no ulterior motives. Believe me, my external incarnation only needs a drop of your blood. Chapter 2062. Down below, Tai Yuan and the others were all confused. Asking for blood from a fucking emperor? Are you crazy? However, many Heaven Yuan realm cultivators were thinking, fuck, why didn't I ask for blood from the snail emperor? Because if it was just a drop of essence blood, it wouldn't be a big problem. After all, you want essence blood, not a wisp of your soul. Who hadn't lost pure essence blood in battle? If essence blood could kill someone, then countless people of the vast sea race would have been killed by now. However, everything had its risks. Who knew if there were any problems in it? However, Han Fei made an oath with the Great Tribulation, which shocked even the Snail Emperor. Han Fei said, "Senior Snail Emperor, my giant beast body will be invincible in the same realm. In the future, when I have a stronger body refining technique, how can I forget you? Besides, what's the point of taking your essence blood? I, Han Fei, am a bona fide sovereign personage, unrivaled in the world, able to open the sea and split the sky. Given my status, I will not tolerate doing anything improper to your essence blood." The old snail froze for a while and said, "You said your incarnation needs my blood?" "Yes." The old snail asked, "Aren't you the reincarnation of Shou?" "Ah. Since I can create an incarnation, why do I need to be the reincarnation of Shou?" Tai Yuan was taken aback and couldn't help interjecting, "Han Fei, creating an incarnation is no trivial matter. It's impossible to create it without a host body. This requires a lot of luck." Han Fei said, "I have a lot of luck. I got a monster emperor inner core in the imperial palace and used it as the foundation to create a big meridian. I even obtained some of Shi Po Huang's flesh from the sword god as a primer. Then, I severed my own flesh, blood, and divine soul, and added Huang Jingyuan's flesh, blood, and divine soul to replenish it. Then, I used immortal qi and chaotic qi to nourish my beast body. But now, I feel that this body can be improved even further." Hey, why are you all looking at me with such expressions? Senior Snail Emperor, if I can't integrate your essence blood within 10 minutes, my demon body will be completed, and I won't have a chance later. To be honest, both the old snail and Tai Yuan were stunned. Are you fucking creating an avatar? Are you creating a god? Han Fei didn't hide this secret, so the toad behemoth and the others heard it. At that instant, the crowd of martial dominator beasts was dumbfounded. Their hearts skipped a beat after hearing the words. The demon emperor's inner Dan, Shi Po Huang's blood essence, Wang Jingyuan's flesh, he even wanted to kill himself, and he even used the immortal qi, and now he still wanted the snail emperor's blood essence. This bastard was really going all out just to create an avatar. The toad said, "My goodness, what do you think he's going to create? Watery doodle, are you stupid? It's either the snail or the octopus, or the one that left behind the demonic emperor's inner core." The one-horned female flood dragon said, "I heard that he is going to walk the path of nirvana. He set his starting point so high at the beginning. What is he going to do next? Don't tell me you want to kill a nirvana emperor." All the giant beasts, however, this time, even the old snail and Tai Yuan were frightened by him. If Han Fei really did that, they wouldn't have to worry anymore. They would just have to see how powerful the creature he created would be. But the old snail was not willing to be taken advantage of. He said, "I can give you the blood essence. But you have to give me a body refining technique more powerful than the pure mystic body." Han Fei's face turned green and he cursed, "You are blackmailing me." The pure mystic body was left by a venerable emperor. "You want me to find you a technique more powerful than this, and you want me to give you a drop of blood essence?" Cough, cough, the old snail also seemed to feel that it might be a bit too much, so he said, "Well, if you can find such a powerful body refining technique in the future, you can give me a copy. But if you find it, but don't. 100,000 years. Hearing that the old snail was going to continue, Han Fei was shocked. He now had two body refining techniques that were better than the pure mystic body. If the old snail said that if he found it but didn't give it to him, it would affect his plan to split open the sky. What should he do? Would he give him another body refining technique before splitting open the sky? So, Han Fei roared, 100,000 years, within 100,000 years, I will definitely get you a body refining technique stronger than the pure mystic body. If I can't get it, I will die. I swear to the heavenly Tao, swear to luck, and swear to the incarnation I created. Otherwise, I will never be able to achieve immortality. Hurry up, it's too late. Senior, stop nagging. Hearing this, the old snail thought that Han Fei's oath was really fucking cruel. Hearing this, the old snail didn't hesitate and immediately threw out a drop of blood essence. Han Fei's eyes lit up, turned it into blood essence, and with a swish, plunged into his sea of origin, leaving all the giant beasts outside, including the old snail, to stop cultivating. As Han Fei said, if Han Fei's incarnation would take shape within 100 seconds, then he would be able to see it in a while. What kind of magical thing did Han Fei's incarnation create? In Han Fei's sea of origin. Han Fei hummed a tune and smacked his lips. Little guy, with the IQ of a snail, do you think you can fight with me? I've cheated the South, deceived the North, and even talked nonsense in front of eldest senior brother. If I can't even fool you, I'll write my name backwards. Han Fei shouted without hesitation, devour. Anyway, Han Fei had no gate to heaven now. Since he hadn't comprehended the heavenly Tao, and his strength had been reduced after creating an incarnation, it wouldn't be a problem for him to stay in the Sea of Origin for another 1,000 or 800 years. On the contrary, he could take advantage of the time of devouring to study his own Tao. Thinking of this, he couldn't be happier. Of course, he still had to go out and put on a show later. His incarnation had just been created. Once he walked on the giant beast divine path, he would become a member of the giant beast clan. And the giant beast clan was the least likely to possess him. If the old snail wanted to possess his incarnation, he would have to give up his heaven-opening state body and recultivate all the way. Besides, he told the old snail that although those who created incarnations were all heaven-opening state powerhouses, they were only at the heaven-opening state. The old snail himself was already at the heaven-opening state, so it was meaningless for him to possess him. Unless he knew that there was a god in his Zhang Daqian bloodline. However, even the old turtle didn't know about this, and even the immortal demon octopus didn't know about it. How could the old snail know about it? Therefore, the old snail had 10,000 reasons not to attack him. In fact, he would even treat her well because her identity as a human was extremely invasive. It was only a matter of time before he annihilated the 100 demon clan and the human clan at the bottom of the sea, and it was not impossible for him to unify the 36 mysterious heavens. Besides, he still had the nautical panorama, which could allow him to leave the chaotic sea. Therefore, he was the most likely to carry forward the giant beast clan. And the giant beast clan was powerful in itself. Would he use the giant beast clan when the time came? Most likely, he would. Therefore, from the moment Han Fei became a giant beast, the human clan and the giant beast clan were closely related. For this reason, the old snail had 10,000 reasons to protect him, but not one reason to hurt him. After adapting to the origin sea for a while, Han Fei also studied the combat skills and personal comprehensive strength of the external incarnation. In terms of combat skills, when the immortal ray burst out and shot at Han Fei's body, Han Fei felt a pure and domineering annihilation power. The moment this power touched him, it tried to disintegrate his physical body. Of course, no matter how strong the attack of a Tao Seeker was, it would be good if it could shake a venerable. Facing Han Fei's body, no matter what kind of ray it was, it didn't feel anything at all. However, the immortal demon octopus had inherited Han Fei's power. So when Han Fei burst out the power of the immortal demon octopus, he was surprised to find that its strength was as high as 1,506 waves. What kind of concept was this? When Han Fei first reached level 76, if he remembered correctly, his strength should be less than 700 waves. Then he obtained an opportunity, and after reaching level 77, he had many opportunities to surpass 1,000 waves. And 1,500 waves, that was the power that Han Fei cultivated when he was in the semi-venerable realm. Even though Han Fei had just entered the venerable realm, his strength was only 3,000 waves. Ordinary venerables only had the strength of 1,000 waves or a little more. In addition to the power, Han Fei observed the immortal demon octopus. Some of the meridians that he had tampered with had been corrected, but the effect of the yin-yang millstone was still there. However, the effect was not so strong, only less than 1/10 of the original. However, he didn't know how to create creatures, so it was already good enough that the effect was 1/10. In other words, the power of the immortal demon octopus had reached the venerable realm, and it was not an ordinary venerable. It was already so strong before cultivating the giant beast divine path. How strong would it be if it cultivated the giant beast divine path? Thinking of this, the corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. It was time to go out and put on a show. Otherwise, the old snail would think that he cheated him of his essence blood. In the outside world, the kings all raised their heads, wanting to see what Han Fei's avatar looked like. A centipede giant beast said, "The problem is that this avatar that has just been created shouldn't be too strong, right? All his power has been transformed into the origin and he's made an avatar. I guess he's only at the demonization realm or the sea demon realm now, right?" The 7 snakes and dragon snake said, "Not necessarily. They're all at the heaven opening realm. Even if it's used to build the origin, its strength is not as simple as the demonization realm." The toad said, "I think he may have reached the sea spirit realm. Then he only needs to cultivate for a few years to stabilize the Tao-seeking realm. In less than 100 years, he will have a chance to become a venerable. Maybe he can transcend the tribulation and become a king in 10,000 years." The kings couldn't help but look at the toad. Really? How can he walk so fast on the giant beast divine path? The toad said, "I think he has a lot of resources. We can't treat him with common sense." All of a sudden, a tiny black octopus that was thousands of feet in size appeared in his field of vision. The octopus roared, "I, Zhang Daqian, am invincible in the same realm. Who wants to fight me?" Chapter 2063. Han Fei appeared aggressively and arrogantly. Not to mention his size, just by looking at his ferocious momentum, he didn't lose. All the giant beasts were stunned. Before they could react, this fellow had already started to clamor. "Are there any giant beasts that have just become venerable ones? I, Zhang Daqian, beg for your death." All the kings, the venerables, everyone was dumbfounded by Han Fei's performance and even felt it was incredible. Is this the demeanor of a king? However, when they saw Han Fei's octopus incarnation, they knew they guessed right. It seemed that Han Fei chose the octopus itself between an octopus, a snail, and an unknown sea demon. They seemed to know why. If Han Fei chose the snail, he would follow in the footsteps of the Snail King. The Empress Snail had repeatedly said that she wasn't powerful when she was at the venerable realm and that she was only good at taking hits. It could be seen that the Emperor Snail's main ability was defense. It was more durable than some crabs, shellfish, lobsters, and snails. However, the octopus was different. It was good at both offense and defense. Many people had considered this before making their choice. However, due to various reasons, he didn't make a choice. However, this did not mean that there were fewer giant beasts that chose the body of an octopus. The main reason was that most giant beasts still cultivated and evolved with their original bodies. Even so, there were as many as 10 octopuses in the origin grounds, and 2 of them were monarchs. Seeing that Han Fei turned into an octopus, the octopuses all smiled. "Ha! Our octopus lineage has gained another expert. This person cannot be underestimated. At the very least, he is an expert who can stand shoulder to shoulder with Senior Tai Yuan. His name is Zhang Daqian, and his name is very unique to my clan." Was he going to challenge now? He had only just formed his avatar. Had he gotten used to it yet? This is a fight. Amidst the chaos of the beasts, the old snail looked Han Fei up and down and confirmed his identity many times before he said in confusion, "Huh? I've never seen your breed before." Han Fei grinned. "I've awakened a primeval beast bloodline. It's normal that I haven't seen it in the chaotic ocean." Hiss. Even the old snail couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He even awakened a great desolate vicious beast bloodline. Normally, those seen in the chaotic azure sea were mixed blood descendants of prehistoric beasts. Those that could be related to the great desolate beasts were usually not too weak. It seemed that the result of Han Fei's desperate attack on this incarnation was unexpectedly good. The old snail said, "It has just been formed and you are already at the intermediate Tao-seeking realm?" The octopus body said, "This might have something to do with the immortal qi. After all, I killed Huang Jingyuan and got a lot of it. Alright, now that my divine body has appeared, is there a weakest giant beast venerable that wants to spar with me?" The old snail said, "You've only created an incarnation, you haven't walked on the giant beast divine path yet. You want to compete with the giant beast venerable one now?" Even the weakest giant beast venerable one had almost 2,500 waves of power. "Are you sure you can beat him?" Han Fei grinned. "Come on." Zhang Daqian bounced off the ground with his tentacles and leaped into the air. He looked at a giant scorpion beast and said, "You should be the weakest, right? Come, attack with all your might, don't hold back." Xia Sanchue had immediately thought of running. He had thought this was a matter of sea expansion experts. With his weak strength, how could it possibly concern him? However, Han Fei had chosen him. Xia Sanchue had no choice but to look at the Snail Emperor. The Snail Emperor nodded and said, "Sanchue, go all out." Xia Sanchue sighed inwardly when he heard this. He then looked at Han Fei and said, "Sir King, please excuse me." Han Fei stretched out a tentacle and hooked it. "Don't worry. I need someone to test my strength. Let's not talk about anything else first. You're known as the Three Hammers, so I'll let you hammer me 3 times first." All the giant beasts, Xia Sanchue was also confused. He had never heard such an unreasonable request in his life. Even the other giant octopuses were dumbfounded. One of the octopus behemoths said, "I don't think that's possible. Although the octopus clan is extremely flexible and resilient, and our ability to resist attacks is very strong. However, if Xia Sanchue really went all out, his strength would definitely reach 3,000 waves. How can a mid-stage Tao-seeking realm cultivator block it?" An octopus behemoth nodded. "If it's a demi-venerable, I believe Han Fei will definitely win. However, the mid-stage Tao-seeking realm is still far from the demi-venerable realm. Besides, he hasn't embarked on the divine path of beasts yet. Even if he has a primeval beast bloodline, can his strength reach 800 waves?" Obviously, everyone had the same opinion. No matter how good you were at neutralizing the force, you might be able to survive 3 or 4 times the force, but you wouldn't die. The gap between you and Han Fei was almost 4 times. Besides, the effect of every extra wave of force would be completely different, which couldn't be measured in multiples. Xia Sanchue was a ferocious scorpion anyway. Hearing Han Fei's request, he wanted to object. Han Fei's king body was still here, and he couldn't really smash him. He raised his huge body and smashed his stinger like a hammer. Because Han Fei wanted a hammer, he didn't move. The shadow of the hammer smashed down like a meteor. Bam! However, Han Fei didn't block it at all. Floating in midair, he was smashed more than 2,000 kilometers away and hit a lobster behemoth king that was watching. Naturally, the lobster behemoth king didn't feel anything. Instead, it stared at Han Fei. "Han Fei, are you alright?" However, a pillar of water bounced off the lobster behemoth king and passed 2,000 kilometers quickly. Unharmed, Han Fei shouted, "Is that all the power of your hammer? I don't even feel any pain." Again. Seeing that Han Fei could still counterattack, Xia Sanchue immediately spun, and his 2 giant claws and stinger collided with Han Fei in midair like 3 hammers. Boom! Ripples flashed, and Han Fei was blown away again, in the direction of the lobster behemoth king. The lobster was even prepared to be the scapegoat for Han Fei again. But in the last 100 kilometers, Han Fei's falling speed became slower and slower. In the end, Han Fei's claws were pushed back by the waves, and he stopped 100 meters before the lobster behemoth king. Han Fei grinned and said, "That was quite an interesting blow." What else? At this point, all the behemoths had figured it out. An octopus of the same clan exclaimed, King Han Fei's octopus incarnation is so powerful that it can completely adapt to the incoming attack and make its body expand like a jellyfish. At least 80% of Xie Sanchue's power has been reduced. A pioneer sea-state octopus behemoth said, not only that, but his own strength is definitely not weak either. The instantaneous power is strong enough to counterattack Xie Sanchue. His strength is far beyond that of an ordinary intermediate Dao-seeking state expert. This is at least the power of a semi-venerable. The toad behemoth beast said, wow, he's already so strong before embarking on the path of behemoths. A few years later, when he embarks on the divine path of behemoths and stabilizes his strength in the venerable realm, who in the same realm can kill him? The old snail and Tai Yuan were also quite shocked. They watched this battle not based on one's realm but one's potential. Judging from these two attacks, the potential of Han Fei's octopus incarnation was appalling. But relatively speaking, the stronger Han Fei's potential was, the more difficult it would be for him to undergo nirvana rebirth. If he wanted to undergo nirvana rebirth, what kind of resources would he need to rebuild his body? However, everyone couldn't help thinking that even if Han Fei didn't undergo nirvana rebirth, it seemed that his bloodline of a primeval beast was enough for him to successfully advance to the heaven-opening state, right? Moreover, looking at the strength of the shield, it might even be able to break through to the legendary immortal level. At this moment, Xie Sanchue's third attack had already begun. When he found that he couldn't defeat Han Fei with his strength, Xie Sanchue finally showed his real stinger. Xie Sanchue thought to himself, Han Fei hasn't practiced the divine path of behemoths yet and this incarnation has just been created. If I can't even hurt him with my full strength, it will be a disgrace to the behemoths. This time, Xie Sanchue roared, tidal stinger. Puff. 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 Although countless stinger shadows stabbed Han Fei's body, as Han Fei's muscles trembled, 90% of the stinger shadows slid away almost instantly. The remaining 10% directly stabbed Han Fei like a sea urchin. Although they stabbed Han Fei's skin and flesh were like balloons. They stabbed here and there, but they still couldn't pierce Han Fei even after hundreds of meters. Xie Sanchue activated the Dao, and the sharp gung metal chi burst out, leaving hundreds of holes on Han Fei's body. Phew, countless behemoths breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that they could still pierce Han Fei's body, but his body was too fucking flexible, wasn't it? Xie Sanchue thought to himself, 3 moves have passed. Is it time to fight? But I've basically used all my strength. However, after this attack, Han Fei only retreated less than 100 kilometers. When he stopped, the hundreds of holes on his body were almost instantly covered by twisting muscles. In the horrified eyes of the behemoths, they were all healed in less than 2 seconds. Xie Sanchue was dumbfounded. How can I fight him? I can't hurt him at all. All the behemoths were stunned. What? You healed? Isn't this shameless? Xie Sanchue immediately shrank back, waved his big claws, and said, Stop, stop, Han Fei, you'd better find a more powerful beast to fight. Han Fei's eyes widened. Wait, you're going to stop fighting? I haven't even started yet. Seeing that Xie Sanchue didn't want to fight anymore, Han Fei immediately shouted, Who else? Who wants to fight? Immediately, all the venerable behemoths fell silent. There was no benefit if they won, and they would be humiliated if they lost. Han Fei watched for a long time. Seeing that no one responded, he couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, I'm invincible in the same realm, but I can't find an opponent. All the behemoths rolled their eyes, and those who didn't rolled their eyes all tilted their eyes. This guy is so shameless. He knows that I'm so strong, but he still finds the weakest one to show off. If you are invincible in the same realm, why don't you find a king to fight? Chapter 2064. After Han Fei's octopus incarnation came out, he showed off his potential value and won the favor of Old Snail and the others. Then he began to cultivate like a normal giant beast. Zhang Daqian's career as a giant beast had just begun. Before he reached the sea expansion realm, he didn't need many resources. Therefore, more resources were reserved for his original body. Han Fei thought that because he had given part of his power to the octopus incarnation, there was still room for improvement. Besides, he already had the opportunity to open the sky. The next step was to study the method of opening the sky. Therefore, Han Fei wasn't in a hurry to go back. After studying the so-called divine body of origin for a few days to no avail, Han Fei wasn't in a hurry to study it again. He casually found a place in the sea of fog and opened up a cave abode. He released Little Black, Little White, Little Fatty, and nine-tailed mantis shrimp. In this way, Han Fei began a long seclusion. In the origin sea. 1,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. On a cliff near the sea in the origin sea. On this day, Han Fei woke up from the cultivation of the void sky observation technique as usual. Han Fei walked out of the cliff, and a jade stone bridge appeared under his feet. This was what Han Fei did every day. In the past, he was busy with cultivation, the way out of the Yin-Yang heaven, the exploration of the imperial palace, and so on. But now, in the origin sea, the time acceleration had reached 64 times, which was enough for him to cultivate quietly for a while. Stepping on the jade stone bridge, Han Fei climbed 8 steps as usual, leaned on the railing, and looked down the bridge. Hee, Han Fei couldn't help but smile. He still hadn't understood the meaning of this great way. Although he roughly understood that these were all him, like yin and yang, repeating the process of going up and down the bridge. However, was there only so many paths for this path? Other people go up 7 times and down 8 times, but this bridge is interesting. It's 8 up and 7 down. It's better to make it symmetrical. Han Fei chuckled and was about to exit the jade stone bridge. But as soon as he straightened up, he suddenly froze on the spot. Symmetrical? Yes. Why isn't this bridge symmetrical? Han Fei walked to the other side of the bridge. When he looked back, he saw himself standing in the middle of the bridge. Han Fei's heart suddenly surged. What he could see in front of him were said to be his 3 great Tao, but in fact. However, these 3 great Taos were only the embodiment of one great Tao. Had this path really come to an end? As for himself, did he really get off the bridge? This thought only flashed across Han Fei's mind for a moment, but it provided a new possibility. In front of Han Fei was the manifestation of the Great Path. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and walked toward the front of the fog. He took a step forward. Dang! Han Fei felt that his body had dropped a step. Yes, it was a very clear feeling. Moreover, the moment Han Fei put his foot down, he was shocked to find that the heavy feeling he felt under the bridge suddenly disappeared. When Han Fei opened his eyes again, he found that there was a road right in front of him. This road was thick with fog and he couldn't see the end. Han Fei naturally looked back, but when he looked, he saw that there was an extra layer on the jade stone bridge. And on both sides of him, it was the manifestation of the Tianqi Great Path and the Time Great Path. He seemed to be on the Central Origin Great Path. However, at this moment, the Origin Great Path was no longer visible, but had become a door. Han Fei took a few steps back, and it was indeed like opening a door. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. It took me 1,000 years, and I was just 1 step away. On the bridge, off the bridge, into the Origin Great Path. So, I've just walked on the great path that I should take. Han Fei felt that there seemed to be an explosive power in his body, which was dissipating through his body. Han Fei naturally understood this situation. This was the sudden improvement of his strength, which caused him to feel uncomfortable. As for how much he had improved, Han Fei felt that it was probably about 30% on the basis of the original operation of the Great Path. In other words, if he operated the Great Path again, he might directly increase his combat power by 4 times. In his current state, what did it mean to increase his combat power by 4 times? That was to say, he didn't need to open the invincible eye and swallow the Tao pattern pill to reach the peak state when he fought with Huang Jingyuan. Han Fei estimated that 2 million waves might be the key to a sea-opening realm cultivator's strength. If the power of a sea-opening realm cultivator reached 2 million waves, he would basically be qualified to fight against a heaven-opening realm cultivator. But if it was lower than that, it would be very difficult. Han Fei didn't think about the power. Since he had cracked the secret of the Jade Stone Bridge and opened up this misty road, why not try to go forward? However, when Han Fei wanted to break into the mist, there seemed to be infinite resistance in front of him, blocking him. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't give in so easily. He raised his hand and punched. The terrifying power only made the mist take a small step back, less than half a meter, but the power was absorbed by the mist in the blink of an eye. Han Fei couldn't help frowning. My origin great path is too much. Can't you at least give me some hints? Why did you give me such a mist and make it so difficult to break through? However, since this mist could be retreated, it meant that it could be opened up. Han Fei naturally tried his best, intending to blast away all the mist. Han Fei punched out tens of thousands of times in a row, and when he stopped, he was surprised to find that the mist had only been blasted away 100 meters. Han Fei felt that he had almost done his best. With his strength, even if the emperor just stood there motionless, he could still beat him until he called him daddy. As a result, the mist had only been pushed back 100 meters and he had to walk on a wide road. Was it so difficult? Besides, at the beginning, he could blast away half a meter with one punch, but now he could only blast away 100 meters with 10,000 punches, indicating that the further he went, the more difficult it was to disperse the mist. Han Fei thought to himself, since it's difficult to blast the mist in front, what about the left and right sides? There was also mist on his left and right sides. It shouldn't be difficult to blast away the mist here, right? Bam! 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 However, Han Fei's efforts were in vain. On the left and right sides, no matter how Han Fei poured out his power, it would be instantly absorbed by the mist. Therefore, on this road that was less than 10 meters wide, Han Fei could only move forward. He could only move forward. Han Fei was at his wit's end. When he was almost exhausted, he could only blast away the mist 500 meters wide. Here, Han Fei knew that he couldn't blast it anymore. But Han Fei wasn't discouraged. He used the chaotic gas and tried to open up this mist road. As a result, something that shocked Han Fei this time happened. A wisp of chaotic gas easily opened up a 1-meter-long road. Wow, Han Fei was shocked. That's it. So simple. Judging from the feedback he got from the Jade Bridge, although Han Fei didn't know what was behind this mist road, maybe the mist itself was a great way, and he was now opening up a great way. However, whether it was or not, this road had to be opened, and no matter how much chaotic gas it consumed, Han Fei wouldn't hesitate. Therefore, Han Fei didn't care about the consumption of chaotic gas at all. Almost in a moment, he directly opened up a 1,000-meter-long mist. And when the 1,000-meter-long mist was opened up, Han Fei felt that his strength seemed to have improved a little, but not too obvious. However, when Han Fei opened up to a 1,000-meter-long mist, he suddenly realized that the chaotic gas consumed was twice as much as before. However, this time, Han Fei clearly felt that the power bestowed upon him by the Great Way had increased again, but it wasn't twice as much. It could be seen that the longer the mist road was opened up, the greater the benefits. After the 2,000th meter, Han Fei found that he needed 3 wisps of chaotic gas for every meter he opened up. Seeing this, Han Fei was immediately relieved. Fortunately, it wasn't doubled. If the chaotic gas consumed was doubled for every kilometer he opened up, Han Fei wouldn't have enough chaotic gas. However, it was still acceptable if every kilometer would only increase the consumption by a strand compared to the previous one. Han Fei didn't dare to continue upgrading the time chain with his chaotic gas, but he didn't hesitate to use it on his own Great Way. After consuming a total of 50,000 wisps of chaotic gas, Han Fei opened up a 9,500-meter-long road. Han Fei's face was solemn, and his heart was bleeding. Now he had less than 100,000 wisps of chaotic gas. If he still needed to open up more after opening up a 10,000-meter-long road, he would have to find a way to get more chaotic gas. Otherwise, if he used up all the chaotic gas he had, the stability of his origin sea would be much worse. However, opening up a 9,500-meter-long road probably doubled Han Fei's origin sea. It seemed that opening up a 10,000-meter-long road could increase the power bestowed by the Great Way by about 5 times. After consuming another 5,000 wisps of chaotic gas, when the last veil of mist was lifted, Han Fei was surprised to find that there was no road. Han Fei found, to his surprise, that there was no way out. What blocked his way was a mirror-like jade surface. In the mirror, Han Fei could clearly see himself. However, the weird scene was that Han Fei wanted to reach out and touch the mirror. However, his reflection in the mirror didn't move. Chapter 2065. Han Fei hated mirrors. How many brain cells did the infinity mirror kill to break it last time? Now, in his own origin Tao, how could there be such a strange existence? It was like this on the Jade Bridge. Han Fei thought that what was reflected in the mirror was his every move, but obviously not. But it was obviously not the case. What was reflected in it was the same as the Jade Bridge. It should be another him. He didn't know what state he was in. Han Fei couldn't help but look back, only to find that the open and transparent road was quiet. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly felt his soul tremble slightly. Someone must be calling him. Phew. Han Fei was slightly relieved. In any case, he had gained a lot today. He walked out of the Jade Bridge, walked on a road that led to nowhere, and met himself in a mirror. Most importantly, Han Fei felt that his strength would increase 5-fold after activating the Great Tao. Han Fei felt that if he were smarter, he might have found this mirror a long time ago. As it turned out, he didn't think of it until 1,000 years later. But in any case, the 1,000 years were not in vain. He didn't forget the void sky observation technique and the void body refining technique. Part of the original power that was cut off when he practiced the one turning 3 pure ones in the early days also came back. Han Fei couldn't help but look at his information. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 99, C expansion, C family tree, 651101, chaotic energy greater than 88,819 strands, spiritual power 1236988, perception range 1. 2 million kilometers, power greater than 556,842 waves, first spiritual heritage, primordial vein, second spiritual heritage, a vein of eternal darkness, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 91, second spiritual beast, emperor sparrow, level 94, main art, time fishing, level 8 of void fishing, emperor level, divine quality. Among them, his bloodline improved by less than 200,000, but Han Fei was satisfied. It would be great if he could find suitable blood to devour in the future. And now, he actually had a pile of blood to devour. It was just that he wasn't qualified to devour them yet. However, if he opened the sky, his bloodline level and life level would definitely rise to a higher level. By then, maybe he would have the confidence to devour the essence blood of the hexagon starfish. As for the rest, there were less than 90,000 strands of chaos chi, but it was still not a small amount. It should not be difficult for him to gather 100,000. After all, he still had many enemies, and there were many heaven-opening experts among them. Although 1,000 years of cultivation wasn't considered fast, it was a limitation of one's physical body and not a problem with one's cultivation method. The same was true for the improvement of strength. It was not that the void body refining technique was not good enough, but that the speed of his bones turning into gold jade was too slow. Although he could withstand very strong power, activating the Great Tao and cultivating his body were two different things. Even after 1,000 years, he would only be able to increase his power by around 60,000 waves. Han Fei felt that this little bit shouldn't affect his ability to open the sky. It was only because he had not comprehended the path of opening the heavens yet. Otherwise, he would have ignored these minor improvements and would have already opened the heavens and become a sovereign. As for the improvements of Little Black, Little White, and the Emperor Sparrow, they were all within Han Fei's expectations. Even the nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others had all reached the half-king realm during his seclusion. After all, long before he went to the imperial palace, their strength was almost at the demi-king realm. Han Fei withdrew from the Great Tao and left the Source Sea. Although he had been in seclusion for 1,000 years, it had actually been less than 16 years. And the warning jade slip he left was for when he encountered a crisis. However, when Han Fei flipped the jade slip in his hand, he couldn't help frowning. It was not Luo Xiaobai and the others who were sending him a message. But the snow girls? Did something happen to the ice and snow heavens? Because Han Fei, the 10,000 poison heavens, and the ice and snow heavens were actually allies. In the days after leaving the imperial palace, when preparing to hunt the gods' investiture heaven, Han Fei often went to the outer domain. Now, although none of them said it, most of them had become allies with Han Fei. Whether it was because they were afraid of Han Fei's power or because they really wanted to form an alliance with Han Fei, anyway, the masters of the immortal palaces in the outer domain had more or less expressed their stance. Especially those who had a good relationship with him, such as the ice and snow heavens, the 10,000 poison heavens, and even the berserk corpse heavens. Han Fei had left a warning jade slip for them to get his protection. Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei leaped with golden light and appeared in many places nearby in the blink of an eye. After taking back Little Black and Little White, Han Fei took out a jade slip and said to Little Gold, follow this sea map and quickly return to the Yin-Yang heaven. Give this jade slip to Luo Xiaobai. Little Gold swallowed the jade slip, turned into a golden red light, and quickly disappeared. He immediately rushed to the ice and snow heavens. When Han Fei chose to go into seclusion, the place he chose for seclusion was between the land of origin and the Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei had even planned the way back to the Yin-Yang heaven in case of emergencies. So he rushed back at full speed. However, he didn't expect that the place he needed to rescue was the ice and snow heavens. If this was the case, he could only go there by the common route. If there were no heaven-opening realm experts on the way, it would take at least 2.5 days. Because in the Mist Sea, he still had to find a way to go to the normal route. 2 days later. The ice and snow heavens. The snow girls were now trapped by 2 kings. One was from the 100 Demon clan, and the other was from the Seabed Human clan. At this moment, the 2 sides fought fiercely in the sky. The power of ice froze the void for 100,000 miles, and the airwaves rippled one after another. In the ice and snow city, the city protecting array had been opened. Above the sea demons were surging. Above the sky, battles were breaking out everywhere. On this day, countless people of the ice and snow heavenly human clan died. No one expected that the 100 Demon clan and the Seabed Human clan would give up chasing Han Fei and attack the other humans in the outer 13 heavens. And, surprisingly, none of the major immortal palaces in the inner 13 heavens helped them. When Han Fei came, the snow girls had turned into an ice statue, fighting like an ice sculpture. Bam, 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 clank, clank, clank. Perhaps because the snow girls were being targeted, the ones who came to fight him were an ice sea urchin from the 100 Demon clan and a powerhouse of the ice Dao from the Seabed Human clan. Since the 2 of them were not suppressed by the snow girls' Dao, the snow girls' battle was very difficult. At this moment, the snow girls' ice battle body was already full of cracks. Once the ice battle body was broken, it meant that the snow girls' body would collapse. And in such a fierce battle, once the body collapsed, it was not hard to imagine what would happen. Humph. Snow girls, don't be stubborn anymore. With your strength, you can fight 1-on-1, but 1-on-2, you can't win at all. The snow girls blocked the attack of the ice sea urchin with a jade shield and shouted, Luren Shua, I won't live long. Do you think you can? The 100 Demon clan. In the end, you will fall into oblivion in the future. All of you will walk towards destruction. Hey! You're really good at bluffing. To tell you the truth, in the outer 13 heavens, 7 are under the full attack of the Alliance army. Near the ice and snow heavens, the thunder fire heavens and the wind/heavens can't even protect themselves. Who else can you count on to save you? The sea urchin grinned as if he was determined to kill the snow girls. Every sharp thorn he shot out turned into the appearance of the sea urchin in the void and seemed to seal the snow girls and kill them directly. Just when the sea urchin's body was spinning as if he was about to launch some ultimate move, a golden light flashed. Who is it? The sea urchin king was greatly alarmed, but he didn't have time to react. Just as the tens of thousands of streaks of light were about to strike Han Fei, a series of clanging sounds echoed. The newcomer suddenly ignored his streaks of light and slashed through the sky with a sword light. The sea urchin king's body and divine soul exploded almost at the same time, crushed into nothingness by the sword light. Rumble, above the sky, cracks appeared. A strong master who could defeat the master of the divine palace had died before he even saw who the enemy was. When the snow girls saw the golden light, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. She already knew who the newcomer was. Except for Han Fei, no one could leap with golden light. Luren Shui retreated quickly and shouted, "Sure enough, the ice and snow heavens have surrendered to the yin-yang heaven. You want to escape now? It's too late." Now Han Fei could kill kings as easily as crushing fish. No one could stop him unless an emperor came. A fist mark bloomed in the sky. Even though Luren Shui had frozen the void couldn't bear the power of Han Fei's attack. Bam, above the sky, a black crack appeared, the void was shattered, and Luren Shui was blown up in the blink of an eye. As Han Fei clenched her with the void lines, she had no chance to escape. Rumble, then, another crack appeared. On the battlefield of the ice and snow sky, countless people looked up at the sky. In the battlefield, Bingxue Chuling yelled, "The enemy's king is dead. Reinforcements have arrived. Leave them here." Seeing that the two kings had fallen, the demons and the underwater humans didn't dare to stay. They all fled. But Han Fei didn't care about that. He performed the Gemini divine technique and slashed the void with the navigator to collect their resources and chaotic chi. He looked at the snow girls and asked in confusion, why did the demons and the underwater humans attack? The snow girls heaved a long sigh. If my guess is correct, the Grand Pure Wuji and the other immortal palaces have already given up on the outer 13 heavens. Maybe they just want to force you to come out and take over. Han Fei was alarmed and sighed. Sure enough, the good days don't last long. I didn't expect them to react so fast. The Grand Pure Wuji must have cooperated with the demons and the underwater humans. A bunch of fame-seeking people finally can't sit still anymore. Chapter 2066. Han Fei was absorbing the resources and chaotic chi in the two kings' origin seas at a high speed. On the other side, the Snow Lady explained to Han Fei, the 100 demons and the human beings at the bottom of the sea attacked the divine palaces in the outer domain 3 years ago. It was just that at that time, it was just a small battle, and no one took it seriously. 3 days ago, the Martial Emperor's city had just received news of the unusual movements of the two clans. Soon after, the war had begun. Up until now, 7 great immortal palaces had been besieged. I'm afraid that Thunderfire and Windcutter aren't in a good situation. Han Fei smiled faintly. As you said, they were trying to force me out. Now that the Lianyun twin kings are here, do you think they would dare to stay? The kings of the outer 13 heavens were all masters of immortal palaces. Even if their battle prowess was lacking, they had the support of immortal palaces. Just like how he had fought his way into the Avalon of 5 elements back then, the difficulty level was not low. It was not something that an ordinary king could defeat easily. However, the battle had already begun, but the other party's heaven-opening realm had yet to appear. That was why the Snow Maidens and the others suspected that the Grand Pure One was colluding with the 100 demons and the underwater human race to lure the enemy. Han Fei sneered in his heart. If you tempted me like this when I first came out of the Imperial Palace, it would be more like it. At that time, my strength was not as strong as it is now, and I couldn't even fight against someone at the heaven-opening realm. But now. Han Fei smiled and said, I'll go to the Thunderfire and the Wind Slasher sect first. If what you said is true, Someone should be waiting for me there. The Snow Lady's expression turned serious. If the other party is at the heaven opening stage, Han Fei smiled. Do you think he Dao Yuan, Bei Luochen, and Xian Qingzi will come? The Snow Lady shook her head. It's very unlikely. They were not the only heaven-opening realm cultivators in the inner regions. They were even afraid of the Merfolk royal clan. Not to mention that the relationship between the limitless Grand Tao and the Sword God Palace had already been completely severed. If they leave, the Sword God will definitely not let go of this opportunity. Han Fei grinned. So, they are the two kings of the 100 Demons clan and the Undersea Human clan. At this moment, Han Fei had just finished absorbing the chaotic chi of the two kings and combined them as one. He said, since they want to lure me out, let's go meet them. Swish, with a flash of golden light, Han Fei disappeared on the spot before the Snow Girl could say anything. Looking at Han Fei's departing figure, the Snow Lady couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Although she didn't know how strong Han Fei was right now, from the fact that he had instantly killed two kings, it could be seen that his strength had already surpassed her understanding. However, the Snow Girl still smiled. From the moment Han Fei appeared, she was the first to bet. One of the reasons why he had placed his bet was because the Snow Maidens were from the Yin-Yang heaven. The other reason was that she had entered the Imperial Palace with Han Guanshu and Jiang Linxian to fight for resources. She knew a secret that no one else knew. Jiang Linxian had obtained a special inheritance in the Imperial Palace and awakened a certain ability. Regarding Han Fei's sudden appearance, she chose to believe him at first, so she took a gamble. But what happened later proved that she was right. He had been gambling until today. He had watched Han Fei grow from a venerable to an invincible sea expansion realm cultivator. This kind of talent surpassed that of others who had cultivated for 100,000 years. It was something that could not be compared even if one wanted to. The reason why Han Fei chose to go to the Thunder Fire Sky first was that the Wind Slasher Sky King's speed was not bad. In fact, no matter where he went, he felt that those kings who besieged the outer domain would most likely have retreated when they saw the two kings fall in a row. Even if there were no heaven-opening realm cultivators in the outer domain, if the Grand Pure Wuji really cooperated with the 100 Demons and the seabed humans, they would not allow the heaven-opening realm cultivators to slaughter them. Since it was a bait, then this so-called battle was just a feint, and the real battle had not yet begun. Because Han Fei's speed was extremely fast, when he arrived at the Thunder Fire Sky, he had not encountered any obstacles. However, when he arrived here, the battle in the Thunder Fire Sky had basically subsided. The battle between the kings seemed to have just ended, and the ripples in the void were still releasing the remaining power of the battle. Han Fei smiled bitterly. Sherpa Huang and Kong Shen are a bit slow. While complaining, Han Fei was not in a hurry to leave the Thunder Fire Sky and go to the Wind Slasher Sky. Since the Sea Expansion Realm cultivators had just retreated, they should not be far from the Thunder Fire Sky. Even so, Han Fei did not panic. Holding the nautical globe, he took the initiative to look for the 100 Demons and the seabed humans. 30 million kilometers away from the Thunder Fire Sky, two kings were resting. One of the Sailfish Kings said, I don't know which two died. I'm afraid that one is already here. The other Seafloor King said, not necessarily. It's possible that one died together with the other. Anyway, it's better to be safe than sorry. It's just a feint. If we continue to fight, we will be courting death. The Sailfish King shook his head. It's impossible to die together. We are all Sea Expansion Realm cultivators. Even if there is a gap in strength, human beings are not idiots. With the power of the Immortal Palace, how can we easily die together with others? Besides, we are all feints. Who would want to die together with humans at this time? The Human King from the bottom of the ocean also nodded slightly. It said that if we succeed this time, we'll be able to kill all of them. It said that if we succeed this time, the outer domain will completely become our world. Han Fei is only at the Sea Expansion Realm. Although he killed Huang Jingyuan with the Sword God, it's probably not because of Han Fei's ability, but because the Sword God is too powerful. Now that the heaven-opening realm cultivators of our two races have joined hands, there's no reason we can't defeat that kid. While the two of them were talking, a voice suddenly sounded behind the seabed human king. You seem to be looking down on me, don't you? Huh? Who is it? The two kings were about to retreat, but Han Fei had come here in the form of a black mist. He was already so close to them, so how could he give them a chance to escape? A sword light came out of the seabed human king's chest, and the powerful sword that was the fusion of many kinds of Daos crushed his body into nothingness. And that wisp of his divine soul was caught by the void lines that had been prepared. A king was killed without even noticing that the enemy was close to him, and his soul was shattered. The other sailfish king turned pale with fright. He saw a huge flag that looked like a sail wave in the air. He burned his life essence blood and ran away without looking back. However, as soon as he ran out, with a swish, the big flag was cut in half, and his body was smashed into the sea. At this moment, he saw a knife light appear out of thin air. Han Fei raised his hand. Before the sailfish king could continue to run away, the knife light reappeared and this person's divine soul was directly cut open. The yin-yang reincarnation knife could cut the body and slay the soul. Yin and yang intertwined, making it impossible to defend. Besides, Han Fei had mastered this combat skill for a long time. One knife disappeared, and the next appeared. The 9 yang knives and the 9 yin knives were launched continuously. Being hit once meant that the sailfish could no longer escape. Sure enough, Han Fei didn't need to continue attacking, and the sailfish was killed by Han Fei's knives. Rumble, above the sky, the crack of the great Tao reappeared. Han Fei stood proudly in the void and curled his lips slightly. It was a pity that the navigator had been used up today. Otherwise, these two kings could have provided him with at least thousands of tons of chaotic energy and billions of ultra-quality spiritual stones. Wouldn't that be great? For this, Han Fei felt that he could wait here for a day. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't really wait here. The reason why he didn't leave was to wait for Sherpa Huang and Kong Shen. And when these two died, outside the immortal palaces, the 100 Demons clan and the human kings at the bottom of the sea who had already evacuated retreated again and again. They even began to set up arrays to disguise themselves, hoping that they wouldn't encounter Han Fei. How long has it been? In less than 2 hours, 4 kings died in a row. Are you kidding me? Kings were not cabbages. There were only one king in the entire chaotic ocean sea. Who would want to die? Han Fei waited for about 100 minutes before he sensed danger approaching. Before the danger approached, he heard Han Fei say with a smile, "This is the worst way of luring enemies I have ever seen. If I don't wait for you, you won't even see me." In fact, Sherpa Huang's speed was fast enough. After learning that the 2 kings on the ice and snow sky had died, Sherpa Huang and Kong Shen knew that it was too late to go to the ice and snow sky. So they split up. One went to the wind-slashing sky, and the other to the thunder-fire sky. However, they both overestimated their speed and underestimated Han Fei's. Block, endless vortex. Boom, boom, boom. At that moment, Han Fei saw spiral black holes suddenly appearing in the void hundreds of thousands of kilometers around him. There was a terrifying suction force, trying to pull Han Fei's flesh and soul. At the same time, there seemed to be a huge force trying to suck Han Fei into the black holes. However, this level of attack was naturally ineffective against Han Fei. The sole purpose of their existence was to turn the back of this void into a void turbulence that connected to the endless void. Therefore, the other party's purpose was to trap Han Fei. In the void, there was a flowing void vortex, spinning like a storm, quickly rushing towards Han Fei. Han Fei sneered. "I thought both of you were here, but it turns out that only you, Sherpa Huang, are here. What, you want to stop me by yourself?" At this moment, Han Fei activated his Tao and increased his strength by 5 times. This was the first time that Han Fei had multiplied his combat power by 5 times. Han Fei felt that when his strength swelled to the extreme, his body was a little bit inadequate, as if it couldn't completely bear the superposition of 5 times his strength. However, Han Fei didn't care too much. He pulled out a void blade tens of thousands of meters long, cut through the void, and cut into the void vortex in the blink of an eye. Bam! The void exploded, and the area within a radius of 100,000 kilometers turned into a void storm. In the void storm, Han Fei and Sherpa Huang didn't move at all, but the surrounding turbulence didn't approach them. The big octopus master Pa Huang frowned and said, "Did you split the sky?" Chapter 2067. Sherpa Huang didn't expect that Han Fei could break his attack so easily. How could this be the combat power of a pioneer sea-state cultivator? As the emperor of a clan, Sherpa Huang's strength was comparable to that of Tai Yuan and Bei Luochen. This kind of veteran sky creator was not something that a pioneer sea-state cultivator could defeat. Therefore, when Han Fei broke Sherpa Huang's attack, the latter subconsciously thought that Han Fei had already opened the sky. Sherpa Huang cursed in his heart. Although Han Fei and the sword god killed Huang Jingyuan, it was definitely not as simple as the two of them joining hands. Although he didn't know what methods they used, it was definitely not as easy as the rumors said to kill Huang Jingyuan in the apotheosis heaven. And at that time, Han Fei was only in the pioneer sea state. This made Sherpa Huang slightly cautious, wondering if it was too risky for him to intercept Han Fei alone. However, when Sherpa Huang was less than 100,000 kilometers away from Han Fei, their souls collided, and she let out a long sigh of relief. "It turns out that you are still in the pioneer sea state." Han Fei chuckled. "Why?" "I am still in the pioneer sea state. Don't you feel scared?" "Humph," Sherpa Huang snorted coldly. There is a huge difference between the pioneer sea state and the pioneer sky state. It is impossible for a pioneer sea state cultivator to unleash the power of the pioneer sky state unless you use some kind of secret method. Since it is a secret method, let's see how long you can last. Han Fei smiled faintly. "But I can reverse time." Sherpa Huang, of course, Sherpa Huang knew that Han Fei could reverse time, but he didn't believe that this ability was infinite and flawless. Otherwise, if Han Fei could reverse time all the time, what was the point? Wouldn't it be impossible to kill him? Besides, even if Han Fei could reverse time, so what? Although the pioneer sky state cultivators might not be able to step into the river of time, it didn't mean that they could attack the river of time. At the pioneer sky state, their lifespan was millions of years. Even if they accidentally fell into the river of time, it didn't mean that they would definitely die. It didn't mean that he would definitely die. The difficult part was how to find the original timeline. That was the crux of the problem. Therefore, Sherpa Huang wasn't very worried about Han Fei's ability to reverse time. Sherpa Huang said, "I didn't intend to conquer the 13 outer skies this time, nor did I intend to kill you. I only wanted to see your attitude. Now, it seems like you value the human race's outer realm 13 heavens quite a bit." Sherpa Huang wasn't in a hurry to act. If the Supreme Purity Palace and the Limitless Sword sect didn't care about the outer domain 13 heavens, these kings would have been killed long ago. The so-called abandonment of the outer 13 heavens and the attack of the 100 demon clans and the underwater human clans were just to see Han Fei's attitude. Therefore, if Han Fei didn't make a move, perhaps a few kings of the outer 13 heavens would die, but it would be almost impossible to annihilate the outer 13 heavens. Otherwise, the human race would only be left in the inner reaches. Even if the higher-ups didn't care, the ordinary people would definitely hold grudges. After all, they were all humans. The so-called inner and outer reaches were only divided according to the strength of the human race. If the outer 13 heavens went to the inner reaches, it would be very dangerous, but that didn't mean that the inner reaches thought they were stronger than the outer reaches. And Han Fei's appearance this time gave the Limitless Sword sect a legitimate reason to throw the outer 13 heavens to Han Fei. Once a person was tied down, there would be more flaws. Just like how Han Fei didn't hesitate to put himself in danger to save the Yin-Yang heaven. Although the Yin-Yang heaven was still saved by him in the end, it was an indisputable fact that he was in danger. It was just that some people didn't take Han Fei seriously back then, so they naturally didn't put much effort into attacking Han Fei. But now, it could be said that He Daoyuan, Bei Luochen, Xian Qingzi, Sherpa Huang, and Kong Shen, the 5 heaven-opening realm experts, all hoped that Han Fei would die. Even if they didn't join forces, they were actually in a disguised alliance. As long as Han Fei died, they would still be enemies. And as long as Han Fei was alive, the emperors would be unable to eat or sleep in peace. Seeing that Sherpa Huang didn't hesitate to state the purpose of this attack, Han Fei chuckled. Is that so? Since you guys have made a move, it must be something that the Supreme Purity Palace and the Limitless Sword sect have tacitly agreed to. If I don't make a move, I'm afraid that the monarchs of the 13 outer domains will all die, right? Killing monarchs and not touching the ordinary humans of the 13 outer domains, I think He Daoyuan and the others can accept it. However, I am the human monarch, how can I sit back and do nothing? The moment Han Fei decided to make a move, he was also prepared to take over the 13 outer domains. As early as when the Arch Palace came out, he was already prepared to take over. It was just that at that time, he didn't dare to say it. If at that time, the Limitless Sword sect threw the outer domains to him, then it would really be a mess. However, these experts always liked to plan before making a decision. Because they had controlled the 13 outer domains for tens of thousands of years, even the Supreme Purity Palace didn't dare to just throw them away. Otherwise, the image of the Supreme Purity Palace would be gone. Even now, the Limitless Sword sect didn't say that it would give up on the 13 outer domains, but it secretly joined forces with the 100 demon race and the underwater human race to forcibly push the blame to Han Fei. After all, compared to the inner regions, the 13 outer heavens really didn't have that many powerhouses. However, pushing the blame to Han Fei also forced Han Fei to protect the 13 outer domains, which was advantageous for them to attack Han Fei. After killing Han Fei, they would take back the 13 outer domains and drive away the enemies. This way, it wouldn't hinder their rule. This was naturally a brilliant move. Unfortunately, they didn't expect that Han Fei had already allied with the Behemoth clan. Moreover, they also underestimated Han Fei's speed of growth. Now, Little Gold should have found Luo Xiaobai. Luo Xiaobai would definitely inform the Sword Heavenly Heaven and contact the 9 Palace Heaven immediately. As for the Sword God, he would appear at appropriate times to restrain the Limitless Sword sect, so that they didn't dare to act rashly. Even if the 2 families rushed to the outer domains to ambush Han Fei, at most one would come. Otherwise, how could the Sword God really stand by and watch? Therefore, Han Fei was now fearless. He said, Sherpa Huang, I advise you to stop as soon as possible. The Limitless Sword sect doesn't appear, but you guys have become thugs. Why don't I know that you guys have become the Limitless Sword sect's lackeys? Humph. It's just cooperation. As long as you die, everything will return to the right track. After saying that, Sherpa Huang took action. The octopus itself appeared, and a tentacle stretched out from the countless void holes around Han Fei. Each of those tentacles had a terrifying traction force, and the qi and blood that Han Fei released were almost drained in the blink of an eye. Facing a heaven-opening state powerhouse, Han Fei certainly wouldn't underestimate him. He launched the Infinity Water and the Ultimate Blade. Even a heaven-opening state powerhouse couldn't easily avoid these 2 things. Bam! 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 However, under the strangulation of the Ultimate Blade, dozens of tentacles exploded almost instantaneously. And the Infinity Water caused the sea to flow backward. Hundreds of millions of knife lights, traversing the sky, all turned into the blade in Han Fei's hand. These were all trivial battles, and Sherpa Huang naturally hoped that these means could strangle Han Fei. Therefore, after seeing that his attacks had been blocked, Sherpa Huang once again made his move. Each of his tentacles had a long hook attached to them. The hooks were like sickles, capable of hooking or slashing people. Han Fei tentatively launched the Heavenly God Stab, but it was pierced by the opponent's hook. At that time, Han Fei knew that these hooks could also hook people's souls. Han Fei didn't have any scruples. In front of him, 6 immortal killing auras burst out in a row, and he slashed at those hooks in the void storm. Sherpa Huang looked solemn. The Han Fei he saw today was much stronger than when he saw him in the Savage Abyss, and much stronger than when he came out of the Imperial Palace. The attack of the heaven-opening state was at his fingertips. This alone was enough to make Han Fei the strongest in the chaotic Azure Sea. However, Sherpa Huang shouted, "Do you think you can compete with a heaven-opening state powerhouse just because you can display the power of heaven-opening state?" Bam! Bam! When the immortal killing auras collided with those hooks, the void storm spread again, and even the entrance to the endless void was blasted out by the two. At the moment when the immortal killing auras collided with the hooks, Han Fei smiled. Crafty time technique. Bam! 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 Sherpa Huang's tentacle was immediately slashed into a bloody mess. Seeing that the endless void was about to swallow both of them, the two immediately retreated, ready to escape. Sherpa Huang certainly wouldn't let Han Fei go. His tentacles crossed the sky, trying to stop Han Fei. Heaven and Earth manifestation. Han Fei directly turned into a golden body 10,000 feet high, reached out, and the infinity water returned. He slashed out, forcibly breaking the tentacle that was trying to distort his power. Puff! One of Sherpa Huang's tentacles was cut open, and Han Fei's Dharma idol reached out and grabbed the tentacle, injecting immortal killing auras into it. Rumble! One of Sherpa Huang's arms was crushed. Of course, Han Fei's heaven and earth manifestation was also twisted by the power of distortion. After all, it couldn't withstand this blow and directly collapsed. With a flash of golden light, Han Fei escaped 100,000 miles away. When he stood still, the heavenly opening divine technique came down, and his injuries were mostly healed. Han Fei grinned. The heaven-opening emperor of the 100 demons is just so. Your power is not as good as mine. Are you qualified to suppress me with the great Tao? Sherpa Huang's eyes were cold. Han Fei, the 13 heavens of the outer region are right here. You can't run away. Do you think you can resist me and Kongshan together? Ha ha ha! Han Fei laughed and said, how do you know that the hinterland of the 100 demons is impregnable? What if someone takes action at this time? Won't you suffer a great loss? Han Fei said proudly, since I dare to take over the 13 heavens of the outer region, I'm not afraid of you. I can even give up the 13 heavens of the outer region, but do you dare to give up your 100 demons? I, Han Fei, am the king of the world. How can I be afraid of you, a sea demon? Do you want to wait for Kongshan or go back to the hinterland of the 100 demons? It's up to you. Chapter 2068. Since Han Fei dared to say so, he must have the confidence to say so. He was not really bluffing Sherpa Huang, but with his current strength, he could easily escape from Sherpa Huang. However, in the same realm, no one could compete with him at all. Even if it was just a bet, if you dared to attack the 13 outer heavens, I would dare to fight to the death. Once he was given a chance to kill his way into the 100 demon clan, Sherpa Huang had to bear the consequences. Anyway, although he had promised to protect some immortal palaces, the immortal palaces were scattered. After all, the immortal palaces were scattered and he couldn't protect them all by himself. If you die, I will avenge you. Now, although Han Fei was fighting for a domain, he didn't have to take it. These were two different concepts. Therefore, Han Fei was quite calm at this moment. The nautical panorama appeared in Han Fei's hand and he said, you should know what this is, right? With it, I won't get lost in the chaotic sea. Guess, will you return to the base of the 100 demon clan first, or will I find the base of the 100 demon clan first? As soon as Han Fei's voice fell, his figure turned into a golden light and appeared 600,000 kilometers away. Sherpa Huang's face changed drastically. Is this kid so crazy? Could it be that in for a penny, in for a pound, he would go all the way to his hometown? After a while, Sherpa Huang lost track of Han Fei because Han Fei was too freakishly fast. Even Sherpa Huang didn't dare to set foot on this extreme speed. At this moment, another figure followed the tracks of the two of them and chased after them. Who else could it be but Kong Shen of the Seabed Human clan? Kong Shen came from Zhanfeng Tian, so he was a bit slower. Seeing Sherpa Huang frowning, Kong Shen immediately asked, "Where is Han Fei?" Sherpa Huang said, "I don't know if he went to the hinterland of the 100 Demon clan. But no matter whether he did or not, this war may come to an end." "Why?" Kong Shen frowned and said, "To the hinterland of the 100 Demon clan. Is he courting death?" Sherpa Huang shook his head. "This kid already has the ability to fight me. How is that possible?" But Kong Shen recalled the battlefield he had just seen. At that time, there had been a void storm raging for hundreds of thousands of miles. It didn't seem like the power of a sea expansion expert. Sherpa Huang said, "When I fought him just now, even though I didn't see him use the power of the Grand Tao, his strength far surpassed mine. He was able to break my Grand Tao with brute force. Do you know what that means? Breaking your great path with just strength?" Kong Shen couldn't help but be stunned. After a long time, he said, "How can his physique bear such a powerful force?" "It's the Imperial Palace's inheritance." Sherpa Huang nodded. "Definitely. His physique had far surpassed that of Tai Yuan. This young man had even mastered the ultimate technique of a martial emperor in the martial emperor city. In the battle just now, he had almost entered the endless void, but this young man had actually used his physical body to withstand the void storm of that level and was completely unscathed. A single heaven awakening divine technique had finished him off. How do you think we can kill him?" Kong Shen couldn't help but take a deep breath and say, "Unless you and I work together, we might have a chance if he doesn't flee." Sherpa Huang nodded. "Before you came, this young man had already fled far away. He said that he went to the hinterland of the 100 Demon race, but I can't say whether he really went there or not. However, the treasure in his hand can indeed find the way. Otherwise, he wouldn't have appeared in the outer realms so quickly, let alone killed 4 kings in just a few hours." Kong Shen said, "What if you and I work together and slaughter the 13 outer realms one by one?" Sherpa Huang looked at Kong Shen. "It's clearly about He Daoyuan and Bei Luochen. If they don't come, they want us to be their fighters. Forcing Han Fei to fight us first, while they stand by and reap the benefits. Are they shameless?" Kong Shen said, "Then what do you think we should do?" Sherpa Huang said, "Since it's obvious that we're going to fight, then let's fight together. At least one of He Daoyuan or Bei Luochen will come, and at least 20 kings from the inner realm will come. Humph, since we've given up on the 13 outer realms, let's be more straightforward. Don't even think about being a slave. If they don't come, at most, we can just move and temporarily avoid them. I'd like to see whether Han Fei will cause trouble for us first or Tai Ching Wuji first." Kong Shen nodded slightly. As the saying goes, without the lips, the teeth will be cold. Han Fei has risen so fast, but the human race doesn't want to kill him. Instead, they entrust the responsibility to us. That's outrageous. Since that's the case, should we retreat now? Sherpa Huang said, "It's not as simple as retreating. Han Fei is neither good nor evil. Anyway, he's not a good person. His words are also half-truths. Based on what he did to the Avalon of 5 elements, Dream-Weaving Sky, Tai Ching Palace, and the other immortal palaces, he really dares to fight. Even if he destroys a few immortal palaces, he doesn't care at all. This shows how ruthless he is. He said that he wants to attack the hinterland of the 100 Demon race, but it might not be a lie. He can attack both the 100 Demon race and the human race in the ocean. Therefore, why don't we move together to deal with the upcoming battle?" Kong Shen said, "Sure." Of course, Han Fei didn't go to the hinterland of the 100 Demon race. Instead, he went to the ice sky. At this moment, Snow City was in chaos. Because the army of the 100 Demon race and the human race had retreated, most people, including the Venerables, were cleaning up the battlefield. At this moment, Han Fei appeared in the Snow God's palace with a swish. Seeing that the Snow Lady was healing, he waved his hand and cast a heavenly awakening divine technique. After a moment, The Snow Lady was puzzled. You're back so soon. No one stopped you. Han Fei said, I met Sherpa Huang and chatted with him. If he's not stupid, he won't attack again. By the way, the 13 outer heavens may become a battlefield, and the immortal palaces are no longer suitable to occupy an area. Help me send a message to the 13 outer heavens. If you don't want to die, prepare to move. They won't be able to escape the great battle. The Snow Lady was shocked. You mean, we're going to gather the 36 black heavens now? Han Fei grinned. The time has come. It's almost time to end things with the Tai Ching Wuji. 7 days later. 3 trade ships of the 100 Flowers Palace and the Dragon Subduing Sky were heading for the Dragon Subduing Sky under the protection of the 4 half-kings. On the leading ship, several half-kings stood on the deck. Hey! The war has just started. Is it really appropriate for us to leave at this time? What's wrong with that? Do you know that the 100 demon race and the human race from the bottom of the sea didn't send anyone to the Tai Ching Wuji? I heard that Demon Han came to rescue them. Hush! What demon? Many people have changed the way they address him and call him the human king. The man sneered. No matter how strong he is, he's just a king. But what about the 100 demon race and the human race from the bottom of the sea? There are heaven-opening realm experts there. The Tai Ching Wuji has given up the outer heavens. Do we expect a king to fight against 2 heaven-opening realm experts? If we don't leave, we'll die. So, no matter what others think, we must leave. Only in the inner heavens can we save our lives. One of the women sighed. If Han Fei has already opened the sky, I'd rather bet on him. After all, the Tai Ching Wuji and the Tai Ching Wuji are not good people either. They're all humans, but they turned a blind eye to the invasion of the 100 demon race and the human race from the bottom of the sea. They're a disgrace to the human race. Someone sneered. Disgrace is worth nothing. Is it more valuable than life? Hum hum hum. Suddenly, their hearts tightened, because tens of thousands of kilometers away, one big ship after another broke through the void. They couldn't help but be shocked. Activate the ship array and prepare to fight the enemy. Don't panic. Prepare the cannons. However, as soon as they said that, they saw a big ship appear thousands of kilometers away from their fleet with a swish. However, when they saw the yin-yang symbol on the big ship, they couldn't help but be at a loss. They had never seen this symbol before. When did the chaotic vast sea welcome such a pirate? However, one of them said in horror, no, it's not a pirate group. That's the symbol of the yin-yang heaven. What? Yin-yang heaven? Swish. Swish. The void continued to split open, and one expert after another walked out of the void. The woman in the lead casually glanced at the Flower Palace's ships, and the people on the ships immediately felt their legs go weak. It's a monarch, Lord Monarch. The 4 half-monarchs immediately cupped their hands. Greetings, Lord Monarch. N. The woman only responded with an indifferent sound. But soon, more monarchs appeared. Under the pressure of the monarchs, those on the Flower Palace's ships who weren't strong enough lowered their heads, and some even knelt down. At this moment, 13 monarchs walked out of the void. It was simply shocking. The 4 half-monarchs of the Flower Palace were extremely shocked. Did the yin-yang heaven have so many monarchs? Why did so many people go to the outer realm? They all realized that the war was about to begin. The monarchs had already gathered. Then, one ship after another flew past them. 1 ship, 2 ships, 3 ships, there were a total of 22 ships, and all of them were Supremacy Realm experts. However, this wasn't the point. Behind these ships, they saw a huge toad that was hundreds of kilometers long, crossing the sky and landing. On the head of the toad, a figure that made their souls tremble was looking at them. Their legs went soft. We just wanted to run for our lives. Why did we have to meet Han Fei, this human monarch? They immediately cupped their hands. Greetings, Lord Monarch. N. The war in the Outer Realm is about to begin. We can't waste any combat power. It's not a good time to trade. Turn the ship around and follow the fleet in front. The half-monarchs were almost in tears. What the hell is going on? Chapter 2069. In Han Fei's view, the chaotic ocean was now divided into four major forces. First, the masters of the 36 Xiantian heavens led by Taiqing Wuji. Second, the mermaid royal family, who had revived the War Queen. But Xia Hongzhu's mind was obviously not on the chaotic ocean. Her greater enemy was not in the chaotic ocean. Not to mention whether or not the merfolk royal family could defeat the many forces in the chaotic Azure Sea. Even if they could, it would be meaningless. It would only increase the war. As the saying goes, if you hurt 1,000 enemies, you hurt 800. Now was the last time they would act. Third, the martial emperor city led by King Wu. The martial emperor city was only in charge of the chaotic ocean and never took sides, so they would not stand on the side of any other force. Finally, there was the miscellaneous army of the outer 13 heavens. However, this miscellaneous army might have been a miscellaneous army in the past. However, the timing of the Grand Pure Wuji's decision gave Han Fei a chance to unify the outer territory. Then, he didn't know whether it would be a miscellaneous army. Now, Han Fei's army set out boldly and did not deliberately avoid anyone, which showed Han Fei's confidence. Of course, the source of this confidence was mainly the alliance with the giant beast clan. The outer 13 heavens. When the kings received the message from the Snow Lady, their resistance was almost at its lowest. But even so, moving the Immortal Palace was an extremely important matter. From the joint attack of the 100 Demon Clan and the Underwater Human Clan, they realized that without the protection of the inner area, they could not resist the 100 Demon Clan and the Underwater Human Clan at all. At this time, Han Fei jumped out and killed 4 kings in a row. It was said that he even met Shi Huang, which undoubtedly meant that the Yin-Yang heaven was coming out to carry the flag. In the Imperial Palace, Han Fei, the Snow Lady, Hong Yu, Liang Yin, Su Yan, and Huang Jie had temporarily allied. Except for Su Yan who died in the Imperial Palace, the others had all come out safely. Therefore, only half a day after the Snow Lady conveyed the message, to everyone's surprise, the Wild Corpse Heaven was the first to move the Immortal Palace. How many people did a Immortal Palace govern? Did it involve resource trade? Within half a day, the news of the Wild Corpse Heaven's move reached the ears of the other major Immortal Palaces. Immediately afterward, the news of the mobilization of the 1,000 Poison Heaven, the Brahma Sound Heaven, and the Thunder Fire Heaven spread one after another. In just 2 days, the major Immortal Palaces of the Outer Realms made their move. On the 3rd day after the 100 Demon race and the Underwater Human race stopped fighting, all the Immortal Palaces in the 13 outer regions, including the Avalon of 5 Elements, moved. Even if there were no King Realm experts present, those half-King Realm experts had no choice but to move. If they didn't move, it would mean that they were alone. And in this kind of war, being alone meant the possibility of being annihilated. Who could be alone? Originally, the inner and outer realms had been separated for a long time, and this kind of ruling relationship was already unstable. Up until now, no one from the inner area had come to oversee the war. However, Han Fei was here. At this time, as long as they were not stupid, they would know how to choose. As a result, the various great Immortal Palaces appeared one after another. The Immortal Palaces appeared, and multicolored light shone in all directions. For example, in the Berserk Corpse Heaven, Hong Yu showed his might and issued an edict. In the past 100,000 years, the Azure Sea has been in chaos again. The sea demons want to start a war. The emperors of the inner regions want to abandon the Immortal Palaces of the outer regions to protect themselves. The Lord of Yin and Yang, Human King Han Fei, has struck the 4 seas, suppressed the sea demons, and protected the outer regions. He wishes to unify the human world, fight the sea demons, and pacify the world. This king is very comforted. From this day forth, the Berserk Corpse Heaven will migrate as a whole. Together with the various immortal palaces, we will submit to the human race and uproot the snowy skies sea region. All supremacies of the Berserk Corpse Heaven, heed my orders. Activate the protective array and pass down the order that the Berserk Corpse Heaven is not to head out to sea. Return to the city immediately. In 2 hours, the entire race will migrate. Every immortal palace had a protective array when it was first established. The core of the array was the immortal palace. The immortal palaces migrated, and the cities set up camp. However, how could the entire immortal palaces be kept a secret? Not only did the 100 demon race and the underwater human race know, even the Grand Pure One knew. In the inner realms, He Daoyuan, Xian Qingzi, Bei Luochen, and company were gathered. Bei Luochen cursed immediately, the Chaos Heavens has sealed the skies again. Every time there is a major event, they don't participate in the war. All they do is seal the skies. That bastard, Grand Pure One, has long been removed. He Daoyuan said indifferently, do you think you can kill him? He's the only body cultivator sovereign. Even with the combined strength of the two of us, it's difficult to kill him. What can you do to him? Forget it. The Chaos Heavens has always been like this. Since you don't participate in the war, don't get in the way. Xian Qingzi said, the 100 demon race and the underwater human race sent news that if we don't participate in the war, they will directly migrate their entire race. They are unwilling to fight Han Fei and company. Furthermore, Sherpa Huang said that Han Fei has embarked on a body-tempering path like Grand Pure One. Furthermore, he's even stronger than Grand Pure One. When he clashed with Han Fei was able to fight him to a standstill at the Sea Expansion realm. He even used his strength to tear through his great Tao. Bei Luochen's expression could not help but turn ruthless. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have besieged the Sword God Palace. Killing that punk Han Fei was the right path to take. Now that he's fully fledged, if we still can't kill him when he's still at the Sea Expansion realm, where will we go once he splits open the heavens? Bei Luochen was also panicking at this point. The main reason was that Han Fei's speed of growth was too terrifying. Some kings needed tens of thousands of years to grow, but this kid just had to be born. It was as if he had been injected with chicken blood, and his strength had skyrocketed. Xian Qingzi added, something was amiss the moment he came out of the Arch Palace. It's likely that he obtained quite a significant heritage in the Arch Palace. He Daoyuan said, ever since the War Queen awakened, not only has she not attacked the inner 13 heavens, but she has also curtailed the Merfolk royalty's range of activity. I wonder what her intentions are. Bei Luochen said, I have some guesses. Back then, the War Queen was said to have left the chaotic Azure Sea, but after 100,000 years, she suddenly appeared here. Furthermore, she kept an extremely low profile. Could it be that she failed to leave the chaotic Azure Sea back then and was severely injured for some reason? Otherwise, with her strength, do you think we're her match? He Daoyuan sighed slightly. If we really attack this time, I'm afraid the Grand Pure Everlasting Sect will lose all its prestige. Bei Luochen said, it's better than dying in the end. Who would have thought that even Sherpa Huang and Kong Shen couldn't defeat Han Fei? Also, there are only a few monarchs in the outer 13 heavens. They are less than the number of monarchs in the everlasting sky. They are a burden. Since Han Fei has taken over the outer 13 heavens, he has to bear this responsibility. This time, he can't escape. This is the best time to kill him before he splits open the heavens. He Daoyuan said, looks like that's the only way. However, even if we attack, we can't be without a leader. The Sword God won't just sit back and watch. If you and I attack the outer realm, even if the inner realm doesn't have to worry about the Merfolk royalty, they have to be wary of the Sword God's sneak attack. Therefore, it's time to release Yun Tianhe's seal. Bei Luochen's pupils shrank slightly when he heard this. He Daoyuan said, Yun Tianhe has been the leader of the Everlasting Sky sect for so many years. I don't believe that he hasn't reached the end of the Sea Expansion realm. I've long noticed that there is a seal on him. You must have spent a lot of effort to hide him. You and I go to the outer realm, and they stay. If the sword god comes, we can still deal with him. If the merfolk royalty comes, the Grand Pure Sky sect will definitely come out of seclusion. That would be the best arrangement. Bei Luochen nodded slightly and didn't speak again. 8 days after the end of the war. The outer 13 heavens. Huge cities appeared one after another in the ice and snow sky sea. There were a total of 13 giant cities, towns and villages of all sizes, and immortal palaces above their heads. Whenever there was a major event, ordinary people only felt that although the king's words were terrifying, the lively scene of the human race being united was unprecedented. If it weren't for the fact that the major cities hadn't lifted the ban, the experts of the various races might have already begun to visit each other. At this moment, the kings of the ice and snow sky gathered. Lei Qing of the thunder fire sky, Snow Lady of the ice and snow sky, Wei Yan of the dark underworld sky, Hong Yu of the mad corpse sky, Liang Yin of the Brahma sky, Shi Yi of the wandering soul sky, Hua Qianyue of the hundred flowers palace, Wu Qingyun of the clear sky sky, Wang Jia of the thousand poison sky, and Su Lingfeng of the wind's lair sky. The masters of the 10 great immortal palaces from the outer realm were all present. The Avalon of 5 elements, Soul Refinement Sky, and Blood Evil Sky, which had lost their palace masters, could only send their strongest half-king candidates to participate. I'm treading on thin ice when I'm having a meeting with the kings. I can't even get a word in. Lei Qing said, Snow Lady, since King Han, Human King wants to summon us, why haven't we seen him in 2 days? Huang Jia said, what's the hurry? Yin Yang Sky hasn't arrived yet. They're probably rushing over from the inner realm. Hua Qianyue said, everyone, did you ally with Yin Yang Sky long ago? Why don't I know anything about this? Wu Qingyun said, I don't know either. However, since Human King can take over the outer realm, I must have given up on this. If Human King dares to accept it, I'll follow him. Hong Yu, what's there to be afraid of? Lord Human King can even kill Huang Jingyuan, how about you guys? Don't worry about what you shouldn't. The human race is unified. This is a great era. In my opinion, the Grand Pure One should have unified the human race long ago. Lu Xiantian went their own way and everyone had to be independent. Now that they're here, won't they gather together? Everyone was speechless when they heard Hong Yu's words. You were the one who supported Tai Qing back then. Now that Han Fei is so powerful, you've forgotten about Tai Qing in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, the void shook. The kings all looked up. Swish, swish, swish. One king after another stood proudly on the snowy sky. In the end, when a pioneer sea state toad jumped out, the kings couldn't help but gasp and exclaim, giant beasts. Swish. Han Fei stood on the toad's head and looked at the kings. Looks like you're all fast. Chapter 2070. The moment Han Fei appeared, the monarchs of the outer 13 skies were shocked. These monarchs were all from Yin Yang Heaven and Waterwood Heaven. Didn't Yin Yang Heaven just come out of the Savage Abyss? Where did so many monarchs come from? Also, why would the monarch of the giant beast clan appear with Han Fei? Fortunately, only one giant beast had come. Everyone guessed that it might be a giant beast that Han Fei had subdued. Huang Jie sighed. It seems that Yin Yang Heaven has indeed recovered. Everyone was shocked. They hadn't taken Yin Yang Heaven seriously before. They thought that a celestial palace that had been in decline for many years wouldn't be able to rise again without 10,000 years of recuperation. However, the truth was that in just 100 years, Yin Yang Heaven had produced 13 monarchs. In the chaotic ocean, although the heaven-opening realm was actually a dominating existence, the monarchs were also the top combat power in the chaotic ocean. Once one entered the monarch path, all living beings were ants. This was not just a saying. To be able to become a king, which one of them wasn't blessed with luck and had outstanding talent? If they wanted to blame someone, they could only blame the kings for not having a clear enough understanding of the sea expansion realm and the source sea. Han Fei didn't waste any more time. He said, I am Han Fei, the master of Yin Yang Heaven. Since I stand up today, I will protect the outer 13 skies. No matter what grudges there were between Yin Yang Heaven and the outer celestial palaces in the past, I will write them off today. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. In the past, when Yin Yang Heaven was in trouble, many people just stood by and watched. Now, the inner area didn't care about the outer area, but it was Han Fei's turn to protect the celestial palaces. It was really ironic. Han Fei said, "Many of you are veteran monarchs. Maybe you have seen the previous monarchs. Since the previous monarch Wang Dongdu, the people have not been unified since you divided the 36 Xuantians. The monarchs are fighting on their own and scattered. If it weren't for the deterrence of the Grand Pure Wuji, you might have been swallowed by the 100 demons and the human race. I don't mean to unify the 36 Xuantians of the human race immediately, but the human race should be united in front of a great enemy. Since all of you are here, why are the celestial palaces so far away? Why don't we just come together and become one?" At this time, Heavenly King Spectral Souls Gu Shi said, "Human King, now that things have come to this, it is not difficult for us to merge. However, if we only have kings, how are we going to face the 100 demon race and the human race, who are at the heaven opening stage? If all the immortal palaces merge, will they be wiped out by the other party?" Han Fei asked back, "How long has the sky of drifting specters been independent of the outer sea? Has it been destroyed? Was it Shi Huang who couldn't beat you, or was it Kong Shen who couldn't beat you?" Gu Shi really wanted to say, back then, it was He Daoyuan and Bei Luochen's fame that held the fort. Now, have you opened the sky? Han Fei seemed to be waiting for Gu Shi's answer. Seeing that Gu Shi didn't speak, he sneered. "It seems that you think I'm not strong enough." After that, Han Fei took a step forward, and his momentum soared sharply. A pressure that was almost beyond the scope of the Pioneer Sea realm pressed against the king level that Gu Shi was not familiar with. Han Fei said coldly, "Remember this. In my eyes, you're worthless. I've killed many kings. I've slaughtered a sovereign realm expert before. I don't need your loyalty, nor do I need the loyalty of the 13 outer heavens. However, the premise is that no one is allowed to question me. Do you understand?" Han Fei's eyes were like torches, and his pressure made Gu Shi bleed. Han Fei was as domineering as usual. For him, the reason why the people of the 13 outer heavens could survive was that Han Fei didn't attack them. Whether it was the 100 demon race or the human race, if Han Fei really wanted to kill them, who could resist him? Under Han Fei's gaze, Gu Shi was horrified. He couldn't even resist Han Fei's pressure when they were in the same realm. But this piercingly cold killing intent and fierce might really made him feel powerless to resist. Seeing that Luo Xiaobai was looking at him, Han Fei retracted his pressure and returned to normal. He said, "The 100 demon race and the human race are my enemies. The Grand Pure Wuji is also my enemy. I might as well tell you that I'm going to kill them. You have no choice. You can either follow me and watch the human race unify and return. Or you can leave on your own. I won't see you off." Hong Yu looked around and saw that the kings were silent. He immediately stood up and shouted, "If this man can't even understand the general trend of the human race, wouldn't he have lived for 100,000 years in vain? The Grand Pure Wuji is tyrannical. He said that the inner area is difficult and we're not strong enough to stay there. In fact, he just doesn't like us. Son of a bitch, I've long found them an eyesore. Our human race has long needed an expert like the human king Han Fei to hold the fort, and not that Tai Ching Wuji who doesn't even treat us as his own people. Anyway, since I, Hong Yu, am willing to follow the human king and fight for the human race, I'm willing to follow him." The kings were speechless. How shameless. Hong Yu, where's your integrity? He, at this moment, Huang Jie stood up and sneered. "In my opinion, you're all used to being the masters of the immortal palace. You're just kings after all. You're all selfish and don't want to give up your status as spiders of the immortal palace. I think it's a good choice for Han Fei to be the human king and unify the outer area. At least, this is the first time the outer 13 skies have the confidence to challenge the 100 demon race and the oceanic race. Snow Lady, the Bingyue sky is willing to serve Han Fei as the human king. Liang Yin, the Brahma sound sky is willing to serve Han Fei as the human king. With Hongyu and Snow Lady as examples, the other immortal palaces could only agree. As for the Avalon of 5 elements, they didn't even dare to say a word. Just as the kings were expressing their willingness to compromise, the void suddenly shook. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Another 8 kings appeared. The one in the lead was Han Xian. Ever since Han Fei found the masters of the immortal palace who had disappeared, they hadn't gone back. The main reason was that the sea was too far away and it was easy to get lost. It would take a long time to walk back and forth, so they might as well stay in the chaotic azure sea for now. This was also the reason why they appeared together with Han Xian. Han Xian. Li Yingtian. Didn't they say that Ashen Sky had already fallen? Gao Bieli. Lihan Sky is still there. When the kings attacked the investiture sky, there were only the leaders of the major pirate groups. Those who could recognize these people were old acquaintances. Seeing the former kings appear one after another, they already knew how many people Han Fei had found this time. Swish, 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 a big ship appeared outside the snow god's palace. The kings looked again and saw the fleets of the witch pirates, the red fire pirates, the gale pirates, and the misfortune pirates had arrived. Chen Guangjia yelled, "Lord Human King, the 4 pirate groups have gathered and are waiting for your command." Han Fei smiled and said casually, "Retreat 10,000 kilometers away. We'll join the army soon." Han Fei had thought of looking for other pirate groups before, but the mermaid pirates would definitely come to help him. The plunderer pirates had been destroyed by him, the peace pirates were still in the martial emperor city, the divine church pirates were nowhere to be seen, and they seemed to be active in the 100 demon tribe. The immortal pirates were not the same kind, so Han Fei did not look for them at all. In the end, he could only subdue the misfortune pirates and the other 3 pirate groups. Although the Snow Girls and Huang Jia had expected this, they didn't expect that there would be 35 kings in the 13 outer heavens besides Han Fei. If Han Fei and the Toad Behemoth were included, there would be as many as 37 kings. Excluding the heaven-opening state, this strength was at least on par with the 100 demons and the sea humans. However, some people thought, what did Han Fei just say? Let the pirate groups join the army? That's it. Han Fei didn't care about what they thought. He said, "In half a day, the immortal palaces will gather here. All the venerables will gather here. Tomorrow morning, we'll go on the expedition." Now that Han Fei's power was established, no force could stop him. Even though the kings gathered by Han Fei might not be of one mind with Han Fei, no one would disobey Han Fei at this time. This was the general trend. As the various main cities approached one another, the borders of the main cities were packed with people. Many people would never be able to visit the main cities of the other immortal palaces in their lives. In the past, only venerables could go there, but now, they were all gathered together. Someone exclaimed, "Look, that's the 100 Flowers Palace. I can smell the fragrance from thousands of miles away. Wow! I heard that there are beauties in the 100 Flowers Palace. Won't we have a chance in the future?" Someone was horrified. "What's that? Poisonous clouds cover it. That's the 10,000 poison sky." Someone was shocked. "It's a paradise for poison cultivators. It said that even the spiritual energy in the 10,000 poison sky is poisonous. We must not go there." Countless women screamed, "That green cloud that's circling, multicolored light radiating for 1,000 miles, is that clear sky heaven?" It said that there are many miscellaneous cultivators in the clear sky, and the men are gentle. There are often sword cultivators in white clothes. Won't they be by our side in the future? This day was destined to be recorded in history. Some people were happy, while others were sad. Those who were happy were mostly not strong and were below the explorer level. Those who were sad were mostly explorer level powerhouses. They could not participate in the battle, but everyone knew that they would be useful in the future. Venerables and above were mostly alone. After all, ordinary people could not live to their age. At this moment, they were nervous. If no powerhouses returned, they would be buried in a foreign land. A great venerable drank in the sky. I didn't expect that the venerables are just ants in the torrent of the general trend. Chapter 2071. The next day. The 10 lords of the 13 outer heavens, together with 7,102 venerables and 200 ships, gathered outside the ice and snow sky. Together with the 22 ships from the Yin-Yang heaven and the Shuemu heaven, as well as the 13 ships from the 4 pirate groups, there were 235 ships in total. In the distance, above the sky, a golden body 10,000 feet high stepped on the void, crossing the main cities of the 13 outer heavens that had already gathered, and was slowly approaching. Wherever the golden body passed, everyone who saw it was horrified. Someone was shocked. Hiss. He's 10,000 feet tall and his aura is soaring into the sky. Which overlord is this? Someone already had a guess. After all the immortal palaces had come at Han Fei's summon. The lords had already told the humans under their jurisdiction the purpose of this migration. Therefore, the moment Han Fei appeared, almost everyone who saw him realized who he was. Is this the human lord? Gulp, someone swallowed and was shocked. Who the hell told me that Han Fei was a human devil? How could the word, human demon, taint his magnificent body? Han Fei stepped in the void and his voice shook the world, echoing within hundreds of thousands of miles. My name is Han Fei, the Lord of the Yin-Yang heaven. In order to restore the prosperity of the human race, I invited the lords of the 13 outer heavens, the silver moon heaven, the white cloud heaven, the flying feather heaven, the 9 palace heaven, the misfortune pirates, the demon girl pirates. With a total of 25 profound heavenly powers, I fought against 100 demons. In the past 100,000 years, the human race had fallen apart and was no longer a strong race. Back then, there were trillions of humans and venerables. Although it was the end of the Dharma age, the human lord went east, the sea demons retreated, and the mermaids disappeared. But now, the sea demons are oppressing us and trapping us in the immortal palace. I live in fear every day, and I might die in the sea. My name is Han Fei, and I'm willing to be the human lord of the present age. I'm willing to lead the army to fight the sea demons and the human race at the bottom of the sea with the power of 25 profound heavenly powers. For the human race, I'll kill the enemy, and create a prosperous world. Han Fei's words were heavy and shocking. How could the hearts of mortals listen to such scorching words? In an instant, an indescribable emotion swept through the hearts of countless people in the various immortal palaces. Someone had tears streaming down his face. It turns out that in this world, there are always experts who bear the heavy responsibilities for us, who carry the burden for us. Although my strength is weak, I only hope that the human king will return victorious and create a golden age for the world. Someone had a solemn expression as he bowed to the golden giant. May the human king return victorious. When Han Fei walked past the major cities, except for those who were familiar with Han Fei in the Yin-Yang heaven, even Han Fei's uncle Han Xian and sister Han Yin, couldn't help but look solemn. Han Xian couldn't help but sigh. Han Guanshu, why do you have such a good son? Han Yin, cupped her fists and said, so this is my brother. At that moment, tens of thousands of people prayed to the heavens and shouted, may the human king return victorious. And Han Fei, the power of will in his heart skyrocketed. Once again, he felt the opportunity to open the sky. However, Han Fei calmly suppressed the opportunity. Humph, now is the time for me to fight the enemies. Don't bother me with the heavenly tribulation. At this moment, Han Fei came to the front of the array. 235 ships, 35 venerables, and 8,098 venerables. It could be said that all the forces of the outer domain were here. Han Fei stood still and shouted, in the chaotic ocean, the human clan is the king. Everyone, follow me to conquer the ocean, quell the riots, and create a golden age for the human clan. What? Is he crazy? Sherpa Huang was dumbfounded when he heard that Han Fei led the army to fight the 100 demons. Isn't this fucking crazy? Didn't you say that you wanted to slaughter the Grand Pure Wuji? We both retreated. Is there something wrong with your brain? You want to fight so soon? A king said, Your Majesty, I've already been to the base camp of the human clan. That bastard Han Fei actually abandoned the entire 13 heavens and all the ordinary people below the venerable level. He came with dozens of kings and all the venerables. He's going to fight us to the death. Bam Sherpa Huang smashed an undersea volcano with a slap and yelled, I knew that this kid is not a good person. Why would such a person come to protect the 13 heavens? He's here to steal the power of the 13 heavens. It's funny that he Dao Yuan and Xian Qingzi used their humanity on Han Fei. This time, they have no humanity at all. Feeling guilty, the king said in a low voice, Your Majesty, what about the camp behind the 13 heavens? Should we attack them? Sherpa Huang glanced at him coldly. Is there something wrong with your brain? What's the point of killing a bunch of ants? Haven't the army of the human clan arrived yet? Hurry up and hurry them. If they don't come, the enemy will be at our doorstep. Yes, I'll hurry them right now. Right when the king was about to leave, Sherpa Huang suddenly said, Wait a moment, Your Majesty, what can I do for you? Sherpa Huang's tentacles shook a few times, and his brain was working hard. He said, The ants in the 13 heavens behind the human clan are useless, but they should be able to cover Han Fei's Dao heart, right? Even if they can't cover his Dao heart, they can at least cover the Dao heart of everyone else who participated in this battle, right? Sherpa Huang sneered and threw a jade slip over. Since he Dao Yuan and Bei Luochen haven't arrived yet, don't blame me for being ruthless. Go and hurry Kong Shen, and don't come back. Ask Kong Shen to send a king to the human clan's rear with you. When the jade is broken, kill them and wipe out the billions of humans in the 13 heavens. Huh? The king was shocked. Kill so many people at once? Was he really going to do that? Sherpa Huang said, Zhang Fei, I know this will affect your Dao heart, but don't worry. But don't worry, if this matter succeeds and we achieve a great victory, although I can't let you go through the heavenly tribulation and open the sky. I can give you resources and teach you the method to quickly reach the peak of the sea expansion stage. Although I can't let you go through the heavenly tribulation. It's up to you. The king was shocked. How could he refuse at this time? No matter whether it was true or not, he didn't dare to refuse. Zhang Fei said, Your Majesty, Zhang Fei will complete the mission. Okay, after Zhang Fei retreated, Sherpa Huang's gaze turned cold. After a moment of silence, his silhouette suddenly disappeared, no one knew where he went. 3 days later. Han Fei's army was still on the way. When he Dao Yuan and Bei Luochen appeared in the 13 heavens, they didn't feel good. Bei Luochen said, Not good. Han Fei is so cruel. Why did he just leave so many people here? Now, even if only one king of the 100 demons and the human clan comes, or even some venerables, they can turn this place upside down, right? He Dao Yuan narrowed his eyes and scanned the area several times with his perception. Then he said, They did give up. It seems that we underestimated Han Fei. He risked his life to save the Yin-Yang heaven, but it turned out to be just a facade. He gave up so many people like a heretic. This time, he is determined to slaughter the 100 demons and the human clan. Bei Luochen asked, Should we let them fight first? He Dao Yuan shook his head slightly. Now that things have come to this, we have to take action. Otherwise, if Sherpa Huang and Kong Shen really avoid the battle and escape, Han Fei's next target must be the Grand Pure Wuji. This is the outer domain, and the power that Han Fei can use is limited. But in the inner domain, I'm not sure if he has a way to pry open the royal family of the mermaids. Bei Luochen asked, Then are we just going to leave these people here? He Dao Yuan sneered. Anyway, they are all people that Han Fei has left behind. Let them fend for themselves. Anyway, you and I can't do anything to them. 1 month later. Many large ships had crossed the ocean and appeared here. On the Avenger, Xia Shaochan and Han Fei stood at the bow. Xia Shaochan said, "Where have you been these days? Why didn't you ask the royal family of the mermaids for help?" Although there is no war between the royal family of the 100 Demons and the human clan at the bottom of the sea, they are not on good terms. If I asked my mother, she would at least help us restrain the Grand Pure Wuji. But now, Senior Sword God is not here, and we don't even have a heaven-opening state cultivator. How can we fight this battle? Before Han Fei spoke, Luo Xiaobai said, "Don't worry. After hiding it for so long, there must be a heaven-opening state cultivator in charge. Although I don't know who the heaven-opening state cultivator on our side is, I guess it must be Senior Mole King, right?" Luo Xiaobai walked over slowly. Although Han Fei was radical, he wouldn't fight a battle that he was not confident of winning. The army had already set off. Facing 2 heaven-opening state cultivators, how could Han Fei not have a backup plan? Luo Xiaobai said, "I'm just confused. If it's just Senior Mole King, it shouldn't be worth taking such a big risk. And Senior Sword God probably won't come. Otherwise, there will be no one in the inner domain to restrain him. So, is Senior Tai Yuan here too?" Han Fei looked at Luo Xiaobai with a smile. Yes. However, Luo Xiaobai still looked a little confused. But even so, it's not enough, right? We don't have an accurate grasp of the strength of the 100 Demons and the human clan at the bottom of the sea, and we don't even know if they have hidden trump cards. If there are only 2 heaven-opening state cultivators, how can we fight this battle if another one from the inner domain comes? Han Fei grinned. Maybe the battle will be beyond your expectations. Let me keep you guessing. Chapter 2072. Under the leadership of Han Fei, the 13 outer heavens charged at the 100 Demons clan in a mighty manner. Of course, they were also suspected by the lords. After all, although Han Fei had shown great strength, he was still in the Pioneer Sea realm and was still far from the heaven-opening realm. In this case, was it appropriate to leave the trillions of human beings behind? And Han Fei's response to them was, of course, that everything was under control. On this day, under the guidance of the nautical panorama, Han Fei's expedition army broke through the wind and waves all the way and finally came to a place densely covered with abyssal vortexes. Because Han Fei came here openly, Sherpa Huang was naturally prepared to deal with him. At this moment, what greeted Han Fei and the others was a violent hurricane. Its coverage was probably more than 10 times larger than ordinary violent hurricanes. The entire wind field was so large that people could feel it from millions of kilometers away. The big ship of the 9 Palaces Heaven jumped out and kept abreast of the Avenger. Han Xian landed on the Avenger and couldn't help saying, "Han Fei, there is something wrong with this wind. The problem is not the hurricane, but the abnormal movements of the underwater veins caused by the hurricane. This is a killing array." Han Fei was also a master of arrays, so he naturally found something wrong, so he said, "The 2 armies are confronting each other. I have underestimated Sherpa Huang and Kong Shen for no reason. I'll go and destroy it." Han Xian nodded. "I'll go with you." In terms of arrays, the others naturally wouldn't stop Han Fei and Han Xian, because these 2 were currently the best at arrays among all of them. In the violent hurricane, perception would be blown away by the hurricane, so this hurricane must not exist. As soon as Han Xian entered the wind field, the Qianji Divine and Ghost Disc changed, and in the blink of an eye, thousands of arrays were launched, and the water vapor in the hurricane gradually became viscous. But immediately afterward, the violent hurricane almost turned into endless wind blades, stirring the void, shattering the crushed water mist, and continued to sweep up. Han Xian shouted, "In the case that perception is ineffective, it may take several hours. It's not appropriate to break the arrays one by one. The best way is to break this array by force, penetrate the wind demon in the core area, and take the sea-shaking wind bead. But there's an 80% chance that it's an ambush." Han Fei grinned. "The water vapor here is too strong. It suits me perfectly. Uncle Xian, please go back. Han Fei was stunned. You're alone. Perhaps Sherpa Huang is waiting for you in the eye of the wind. Han Fei grinned and said, then I'll go and meet him. A moment later, a streak of sword light pierced through the core wind field, killing more than 30 wind demons along the way. Whoosh! With a flash, Han Fei's figure appeared in the wind field. However, when Han Fei took a closer look, he saw an indifferent middle-aged man in a Taoist robe. This person seemed to have been waiting here for a long time. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. Sherpa Huang? It really is you. Don't you think this behavior is very childish? When Han Fei arrived, he said, you do have some courage, but aren't you afraid that something will happen to the fleet outside? Han Fei sneered. Do you think it's so easy to deal with my people? Sherpa Huang didn't expect Han Fei to be intimidated by such a small force. If Han Fei was so easily intimidated, he wouldn't have dared to bring so many people here. Sherpa Huang said, Han Fei, as far as I know, you don't have much power to use, right? Even the sword god is not in the outer domain at this moment. What do you have to fight with me? If you have such power, why don't you go to the Grand Pure Wuji? Instead, you come to the 100 Demon clan to court death. Han Fei grinned. You waited for me for a long time just to say this? Sherpa Huang snorted coldly. I'm telling you, if you die today, I may let go of the old and weak soldiers you brought. Otherwise, once the wind field starts, there will be no turning back for you. At this moment, Han Fei sensed something. The void became sticky, and someone's power descended on the entire wind field, trying to lock the void and confine his body here. Sherpa Huang also knew that Han Fei had found a problem. He said with a smile, of course I didn't wait for you to chat with you. Heavenly talents like you are too arrogant. You think you can dominate the sea with the Gemini divine technique. How do you know that this violent hurricane is to stop your fleet, not to kill you? Explode. However, Han Fei was not stupid. As soon as he saw Sherpa Huang here alone, he knew that there must be a deeper ambush. Therefore, his body of black fog had already retreated with Han Xian and was now at the edge of the violent hurricane. As soon as he found that someone was trying to attack this entire space, he directly detonated the infinity water. Moreover, the infinity water didn't explode in front of Sherpa Huang, but dispersed along with the rotation of the hurricane. Rumble. After this detonation, Han Fei's body of white fog, instead of retreating, charged at Sherpa Huang. Of course, Han Fei couldn't defeat his body of white fog, but it could hold Sherpa Huang back for a while. Shockingly, hundreds of thousands of li of the void where the raging hurricane was directly collapsed into the endless void. And Han Fei's body of white fog forcibly burst out the void lines and entangled Sherpa Huang with extreme speed. Humph, aren't you afraid that even time will be blocked here? Han Fei shouted, if you want to block time, just do it. Let's see if I'm scared or not. In the distance, the fleet that Han Fei brought with him was all stunned. Such a large area of the void collapsed. If the fleet was in it, they would all be swallowed up in one wave. Han Xian had just returned. Seeing the spikes, he couldn't help but change his face. Sherpa Huang is so bold. He even tried to block time. Xia Shaochan asked, why didn't Han Fei come back? Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, and the others also looked at Han Xian. They hadn't even seen the shadow of the 100 Demons clan yet and they had already made such a big scene. Han Fei couldn't have gone to fight alone. At this moment, before Han Fei's figure appeared, he saw a huge flying centipede pouncing on the human fleet like a dragon coming out of the sea. And on the head of the flying centipede, an old man was holding a pitch-black scepter and pointing at the human fleet. A black cloud shrouded and surged over. But when they took a closer look, they found it was a dense crowd of centipedes. A king exclaimed, that's Kong Shen, the king of the seabed human clan. When the giant flying centipede pounced at them. On the human clan's side, a huge spinning sphere flew out to meet the attack. The sphere expanded in the void and rolled into a super water ball that was more than 800 miles wide. On the human side, the kings were dumbfounded. What the hell is this? Since when did human beings have the power to compete with a heaven-opening state powerhouse? However, thinking that Han Fei had said that this battle could be fought, and that the kings of the yin-yang heaven were here, most of the kings calmed down and waited to see how this battle would turn out. Kong Shen was also surprised. What the hell is this? Why is it rolling directly at me? And the opponent also has the combat power of a heaven-opening state powerhouse. Bam! The super water ball smashed into the flying centipede. Kong Shen punched and the black cloud rushed out. Bam! Billions of centipedes were crushed into powder and turned into nothingness. Kong Shen was sent flying 10,000 kilometers away by this terrible force. Gua, gua! At that moment, another gigantic figure leaped out from the sky. A tongue that resembled a jade pillar that could support the heavens coiled around the flying centipede. Wasn't it the toad behemoth that came with Han Fei? The toad behemoth's tongue was barbed like a blade and there was a milky white unknown poison on it. The toad behemoth tore the flying centipede in half. Swish! Kong Shen merged with the flying centipede and quickly retreated. He shouted, "Behemoths, why are you helping humans?" At this moment, everyone saw a cross-shaped blade aura almost run out from the edge of the infinite void. Han Fei didn't use the golden light leap. Instead, he burst out with his maximum speed and rushed out. At that moment, the two merged into one and finally returned. The moment Han Fei came out, the Great Tao was activated, and the Great Tao Convergence sword slashed at Kong Shen. And the Snail Emperor had just repelled Kong Shen and applied a layer of paralyzing mucus to him. Now Kong Shen's mobility efficiency was reduced by at least half. Under the impact of Han Fei's extreme speed, a Great Tao Convergence sword slashed at him. Of course, the heaven-opening state was still a heaven-opening state powerhouse. After being hit by Han Fei's Great Tao Convergence sword, Kong Shen used the force to dispel the paralysis effect on his body. He spat out a mouthful of blood and quickly retreated. Kong Shen retreated, and Han Fei didn't chase after him. Han Fei shouted, "Rest here and wait for the void to stabilize." The first confrontation between Han Fei and the sea demons came to an end at this moment. The two sides had a tentative confrontation, and Han Fei's side only exposed the behemoth bloodline. However, Han Fei never wanted to hide the behemoths. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked the toad to follow him from the beginning. Han Fei even deliberately let them know that he had cooperated with the behemoths. On the one hand, it gave the human race a message. At least the human race had strong reinforcements and was no longer without a heaven-opening state powerhouse. On the other hand, Han Fei wanted to see how much combat power the 100 Demon Clan had next time. Chapter 2073. On the Avenger. The appearance of the King Snail, whose body was as huge as an island, shocked countless people. It was also the first time that the human kings had seen the heaven-opening behemoth, and they were all shocked. A king was surprised. "This is the legendary heaven-opening behemoth. I didn't expect that the human king could even find such a strong master. It's even willing to join hands with us." Someone sighed. Sure enough, the human king can't go on an expedition without a backup plan. The human king gathered all the 25 divine palaces, so the heaven-opening behemoth is definitely not his only backup plan. As for the human venerable realm powerhouses on the big ships, they were even more shocked. In the Thug Academy of the Yin-Yang Heaven, Old Jiang said with mixed feelings, TSK, I never expected that there would be such a powerful creature in this world. Look at the complicated patterns on its shell, which are very similar to the Taoist pattern records left by Han Fei. That's the armor of arrays, a magical shell that can withstand the power and bombardment of the heaven-opening realm. Old Bai also sighed. The power that Han Fei shows is more and more beyond our understanding. The collapse of the void is almost comparable to the collapse of the world where our yin-yang heaven was. Even Han Fei can come out of that terrifying power. I'm afraid he's not far from the heavenly heaven. Chu Jinnan, Ling Yuan, and the others could only smile bitterly. There was no way to catch up. In the battle just now, they didn't even know how Han Fei attacked until Han Fei appeared. Anyway, when they saw Han Fei, the preliminary battle had already ended. Since the king's snail had come out, there was no need to hide anymore. Han Fei was not very anxious. He waited for 3 days until the power of the previous battle subsided and the space stabilized. Then he ordered them to continue moving forward. Luo Xiaobai said, "Speed is the most important thing in war. If it were in the past, you would have already attacked. Why do you have to stay here for a few days? Isn't this giving the 100 demons and the underwater humans a chance? Besides, a heaven-opening realm cultivator can do a lot of things in 3 days." Han Fei said, "A heaven-opening realm cultivator can indeed do a lot of things in 3 days. However, I need to see more of their trump cards. Moreover, in a head-on battle, those fancy tricks are meaningless." Luo Xiaobai couldn't help but look at Han Fei, wondering what this guy was planning. Xia Shaochan had been pestering Han Fei in bed for the past 2 days, but she didn't get any answers from him. She was so angry that she almost stabbed Han Fei. After 3 days, Han Fei's voice rumbled. "Attack!" Compared with how the kings treated Han Fei a few days ago, they no longer dared to look down on Han Fei. They didn't dare to look down on Han Fei anymore. This creature, which had never interacted with humans for 100,000 years, had unexpectedly become an ally of his family. As long as they weren't enemies, who wouldn't like such a powerful ally? If as the 100 demons and the sea, Han of as the Mara as the sea, a mercy as possible, as they as possible, as many as possible, as they were. All. Han demons and realm, the sea as many as possible, the heavens of the beasts, as heaven. Therefore, after these 3 days of consolidation, the morale of the human race actually rose along with the tide. Because they were already very close to the 100 demons, it only took 2 days for the human army and the army of the 100 demons to collide head-on. At dawn, the sea was sparkling. Han Fei was sitting on the deck, fishing leisurely with a fishing rod in his hand. Above this boundless sea, a trace of killing intent inexplicably appeared. Many kings felt something was wrong and walked to the deck. This was an ocean basin. It could also be called an undersea depression. At the bottom of the sea, there were mainly deep-sea plains and deep-sea hills, which were suitable for a battlefield. Han Fei looked indifferent, but he couldn't help but raise his head, put the fishing hook aside, and said in the fleet, "All troops, prepare for battle. Kings choose their enemies. This battle concerns the survival of the human race. We can't afford any mistakes. During the battle, try to separate. Even if you fight in the void, leave immediately if something goes wrong." Huh? What does the human king mean? Not good. The 100 demons, prepare to fight the enemy. All the kings looked around. As the fleet continued to move forward, the army of the 100 demons and the undersea human race that was millions of kilometers away soon alarmed the human fleet. Different from the human side, which only sent powerhouses above the venerable realm, the 100 demons and the undersea human race actually sent many half-king realm creatures. A dark mass stretched across tens of thousands of kilometers of the sea. Sure enough, as Han Fei expected, since the human army didn't run away, the 100 demons naturally had to follow. When the two sides were less than 100,000 kilometers away, Han Fei raised his hand. "Stop the ship." At this moment, all the people participating in the battle had their hearts in their throats. Some people didn't even see the sea demons because their perception range was limited. However, they knew that the enemy was right on the opposite side. Soon, the battle would really start. Han Fei still sat lazily on the chair. He said, "Sherpa Huang, Kong Shen, what's wrong? Are you too short of manpower? Are you using half-king realm creatures to make up the numbers? Aren't you afraid of being crushed by the human army?" Kong Shen snorted coldly. "Han Fei, you have shown your trump card. What else can you play? Even if you have the behemoths as your helpers. However, how many behemoths are there in the chaotic vast sea? How can they compare with my sea demon army?" Sherpa Huang also sneered. "I've never seen a sky-opening behemoth. Since you're here, I might as well ask you for advice. At this moment, on Han Fei's ship, the old man, leaning on a cane, looked at Shi Huang. I didn't expect you to come to the battle. Fine, this octopus is mine. Han Fei said, human army, move 1,000,000 kilometers to the left. Han Fei glanced at the 9-palace sky ship next door. Uncle Xian, I'll leave the battle of the sea opening realm to you. Han Xian nodded slightly, raised his left hand, and the Qianji godly ghost disc appeared in his hand. I haven't come out for 80,000 years. It's time to exercise. Then, Han Fei said to Luo Xiaobai via voice transmission, before the outcome of this battle is decided, you should focus on staying alive. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Got it. Han Xian shouted, put away the ships and follow me. Move 1,000,000 kilometers to the left. Swish, swish, swish. As soon as the ships were put away, the kings and the venerables stood proudly above the sea, turned into streams of light, and moved horizontally. Shi Huang waved his hand, and the 1,000,000 troops roared and, like a tide, rushed to the place where the human army moved horizontally. This was a real battle. In terms of numbers, the demons and the undersea humans had a lot more. But in terms of the number of kings, the demons and the undersea humans added up only had 41 in total. Only 6 more than the 35 on Han Fei's side. Shi Huang said, Han Fei, since the behemoths have joined hands with you, then those behemoth kings should come out. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll regret it later. Han Fei grinned and said, oh. Really? Then as you wish. Han Fei turned his head and glanced at the Snail Emperor. An illusory world appeared in the void, wrapped in white mist. A 7-colored dragon snake and a 1-horned flood dragon appeared. They were more than 600 kilometers long and soared between the sky and the earth. Swish, swish, swish. Then, the crimson centipede, the black-armored old turtle, the deep-sea fist king, the scarlet mantis, and the jade-green crab all appeared in the void. There were a total of 28 giant beast kings in total. Instantly, the number of kings on Han Fei's side reached 63. Gu Shi, Yang Tsang, Huang Jia, Hong Yu, and the others couldn't help but feel excited when they saw so many beast kings accompanying them. With so many beast kings joining them, it was almost impossible for them to lose this battle of kings. The two sides were in position and about to charge at each other. All of a sudden, the void trembled, and a figure that the kings couldn't be more familiar with stepped out of the void. Hong Yu exclaimed, Bei Luochen. You're joining hands with the 100 demons to fight the human race. Huang Jia cursed, I knew the Grand Pure Wuji was a jerk. I didn't expect you to be so shameless as to stand on the opposite side of the human race. Han Xian said, those who betray the human race should be killed. Humph. Bei Luochen squinted at Han Fei. You betrayed the human race. Do you want to wait for Han Fei to come to the Wuji heavens? You're so stupid to help Han Fei, the evil cultivator. Han Fei is going all out for this battle. No one is guarding the rear of the human race. Billions of humans are about to be destroyed. Bei Luochen sneered. A sea-quelling painting appeared, and 20 kings appeared one after another. Obviously, they were brought by Bei Luochen from the inner area. The kings were all shocked. Seeing that the number of behemoth kings had caught up, even Huang Jia and the Snow Lady couldn't help but look at Han Fei. How could Han Fei not have prepared such a backup plan? Han Fei's eyes narrowed. The sea-quelling painting. Ha ha ha! Before Han Fei thought more, Shi Huang burst into laughter, holding a jade slip in his hand. My subordinate, Zhang Fei, has gone to the rear of the human race. If this jade is broken, the trillions of people behind the human race will all perish. Humph! At this moment, Han Fei sneered. Why don't you try crushing it? Shi Huang and Bei Luochen were both stunned. What's with Han Fei's expression? Contempt? Shi Huang's face darkened, and he crushed the jade slip without hesitation. In his opinion, it was impossible for Han Fei to have a backup plan. Han Fei didn't have any backup plan at all. Besides, no one was guarding the rear of the human race, which was confirmed by Bei Luochen and He Daoyuan. They had the same goal of killing Han Fei, and Bei Luochen had already taken action. Why would he lie to them? However, the moment the jade slip was broken, Han Fei smiled. Stupid sea demon. You're still so stupid after becoming an emperor. At this moment, a blood-colored heavenly demon flashed in the sky. Only about 3 seconds later, a blood-colored light flashed in the sky again. Although it was far away, all the kings knew that it was the sign of a king's death. Han Fei said, I, Han Fei, am the human king. How can I give up the foundation of the human race? Are you out of your mind?